time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? Pleasant good evening. Welcome, dissidents one and all, to the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here from the beautiful country of Greece. Russell Dobular.
Hello.
Coming through loud.
Should I say Opa?
Opa, opa, opa. I know how to say some curse words in Greece, I think. I remember.
Dude,
molto kefali. So that was my friend growing up was Greek. Was half Greek, half German, but his father was kind of like building an extension on their house, so he hired these Greek contractors, as you do if you're Greek, and they would just scream and curse at each other all day. It was amazing how much they would fight. Like, they would show up to work angry at each other and curse each other out all day, and my friend would translate what they were saying. So I picked some of that up through them.
The only Greek curse I know is skata.
Skata. Shit, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I dated a Greek girl for a while. That was all I picked up.
That was all you picked up? All right. Was that all she?
That was it.
That was all she had to say to you?
Yeah. You know what's interesting though? Greek. if you listen to it that much, it sounds like an ancient tongue in a way that the Romance languages don't. It's just those really hard consonants.
Yeah, a lot of S's.
Like just listening to her talk Greek a lot, I'd be like, yeah, man. I mean, I could definitely see hoplites stabbing a dude to this language.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, so you were in Italy for a while. Now you're in Greece. So here's a picture of Russ at one of the amphitheaters that the Greeks are famous for. So
yeah, that was wild because if you look in that front row, those were the only ones that had backs because those were for the privileged citizens. So those are pretty intact. So you can just go sit in those seats. So today I was on Delos. I only came to Mykonos, which has a reputation as a party island, which I actually had to move this whole setup to the other side of the room because it earns that reputation. You'd be hearing
I heard it outside when you showed me, yeah.
It's just people are getting wasted. I only came
Russell
to
could
Mykonos.
be scoring with 4 Greek girls at a time right now, and instead he's doing the
show.
What kind of dedication is that?
Here with you schmucks. It's the only way to get to Delos, which is an entire island of ruins, no modern development, nothing. It's just ruins. It's like if you had Pompeii, but it was just an island and that's all that was there.
Right.
Unlike Pompeii, because it's not a destination most people really know about. I was on a side of the island you had to climb a mountain to get to for half the day. I didn't see another person. I pretty much had it to myself.
Yeah. So here's another picture. Look at that sky. Look at how blue that sky is. That sky is as blue. That sky is bluer than our water here. Like, we don't have water that blue here. And that's how blue the sky is. Not this light pastel blue. Look at that deep blue sky. It's amazing.
Well, we sold our blue sky to the Chinese.
Yeah, exactly. We outsourced.
We outsourced the blue sky. Although I will say everything that you've heard, if you're an art lover, an art fan, the whole Venetian school of painting, and it's inspired by the light of Venice. Yeah, the lighting in Venice is incredible. It's like no place else I've ever been.
That makes sense. I buy that. Here's
it's
this.
got just this beautiful tint to it. So yeah, I mean that's the ruins of somebody's house that still has the intact mosaic floor inside. It was just a whole island of these ruins. So if you see these steps, I had to climb to the top of the mountain, and when I got up there, you have all this Blair Witch kind of shit, which is a little creepy, man. Somebody's going up there and maintaining these shrines to the old gods. I mean, it would make a good horror movie, because I went into the museum and they're like, no museum. Like, what do you mean no museum? He's closed. Okay. All right. I'm like, yeah, those motherfuckers are going up there stripping naked, running around with rams' heads on and shit. Look at that behind me. They're still making these little phallic rock symbols back there to appease Apollo. That was a pretty serious climb, and I'm not going to lie. I got to the top, and I looked down at how high I was, and I'm by myself. I'm on this side of the island. There's not another soul. And yeah, I definitely had a little panic attack. And I was like, all right, man, you got to go to the top. You just got to go to the top.
How long did it take you to get all the way up top?
I'll tell you, man, in terms of like a climb compared to the temple in India with the monkey and the dogs fighting up top, yeah, that was like 10% of that climb.
Right.
It wasn't the climb, it's the treacherousness, because I never felt like I was going to die and they're going to find me next season.
Right.
With the temple in India. This is 2,500-year-old steps that are all out of joint and rocky sand. And then you get to the top, and that's where I sat. I paused for a minute, because I realized when I got to the top, you don't realize this, there's another flight of steps at a right angle that's more treacherous and narrow that you had to go up to actually get to the top. So that's when you have to make a decision on whether the juice is worth the squeeze. Right? Like, okay, man, do I want to risk being found here, next April? Am I gonna go back down? I was like, nah, man, fuck it, I'm going up. So I did, and that's what I found up there. There were all of these stacked rocks like that. That's one formation. They were all over the top of that mountain. So somebody's going up there. Those are not there from 2,500 years ago. Like, somebody's going up there and maintaining these shrines to the old gods. It's very, very Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And that's just from up that mountain, what you see down there, the ruins of the city down on the plain. That was incredible. That was kind of what I wanted at Pompeii. And don't get me wrong, Pompeii was incredible, but you're never alone. There's just too many tourists there. Like, to have that real eerie feeling that you're walking through the graveyard of an ancient civilization, you kind of got to have some space and some quiet.
Right. I could see that. So how long are you there? So when are you back in the States again?
I have just officially crossed over the halfway mark of this trip.
So you got another couple weeks.
Yeah, I'll be back October 5th.
All right, nice. Beautiful. Well, folks, 322 strong in the YouTube chat, according to our producer, Jake, in the booth. Round of applause to Jake. By the way, 52 filing in on Rumble. Special shout out to the Rumble chat tonight. Special shout out to the Rumble chat tonight for reasons that I'm sure many of you are already aware of, that we will get to a little bit later in the show. But let's do some stuff, shall we? So Russell's over in Greece, but here in New York, we had an event over the weekend. Tens of thousands marched to kick off climate summit demanding end to warming causing fossil fuels. This is from the Associated Press. Yelling that the future and their lives depend on ending fossil fuels, tens of thousands of protesters on Sunday kicked off a week where leaders will try once again to curb climate change, primarily caused by coal, oil, and natural gas. This time, I think they got it. You see, they'll once again try and curb climate change. Got a good feeling about this time. 352 is the charm, as they say. But protesters say it's not going to be enough. And they aimed their wrath directly at U.S. President Joe Biden, urging him to stop approving new oil and gas projects, phase out current ones, and declare a climate emergency with larger executive powers. Notice they didn't ask him to stop bombing allies' infrastructure, like the Nord Stream pipeline. They didn't ask him to stop funding the Ukraine war. Was that on the list of demands? No, it's fossil fuels. End fossil fuels. We hold the power of the people, the power you need to win this election, said 17-year-old Emma Beretta of Brooklyn of the youth protest group Fridays for Future. If you want to win in 2024, if you do not want the blood of my generation to be on your hands, end fossil fuels. The March to End Fossil Fuels featured such politicians as Representative. Yeah.
She thinks somebody's listening.
Right, exactly. That's adorable. Exactly. The march featured such politicians as Representative AOC and actors Susan Sarandon, Ethan Hawke, Edward Norton, Kira Sedgwick, and Kevin Bacon. But the real action on Broadway was where protesters crowded the street, pleading for a better but not so hot future. It was the opening salvo to New York's Climate Week, where world leaders in business, politics, and the arts gathered to try and save the planet, highlighted by a special United Nations summit on Wednesday, which was today, and we will probably have a follow-up on this on our Friday program. So here's some of the stuff that was going on in the streets. This is what the Sunrise Movement decided they wanted to highlight. That's by design. I muted it first because Russell was on a bit of a delay halfway around the world. So here's the video now. So I don't know about you, but I've never rooted harder for a tsunami in my life than when I watched that. I mean, that is a pro-climate change video. Like, to me, if the Hudson River just formed this giant wave and washed out the west side of Manhattan where they happen to be, I would not feel terribly bad about that in that moment, given that display there. This is, of course, the Sunrise Movement, which pivoted from pressure group on Joe Biden to proud endorser of Joe Biden. The minute Bernie Sanders dropped out, they started jockeying for influence within the Biden campaign, hoping to wield influence within the Biden administration. And now here they are saying, you better listen to us or else what? Or else what? Our great friend.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, that's it. Or else what? And that's, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, with Brianna and Cenk segment later. This is the thing these people can never answer to those of us who are post-duopoly. Okay, so you're going to make them change policy? How? Why?
Right.
Like you're appealing to the better angels of their nature? Is that your strategy, Sunshine? Is that what you think is going to affect a fucking old mummy like Joe Biden is going to be persuaded by your youthful enthusiasm? Like, what do you?
I like Nick
What do you
Riviera.
think's going to happen here?
Yeah. Sound like they could have used a little more cowbell. In that circle there. But yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely right. And our great friend Nick Cruz over at RBN put out a great hotspot video on this. So let's give this a play right now. Cue this up. Bang. Here we go.
So we had a climate march in New York where a bunch of climate activists was demanding that we end fossil fuels and for Joe Biden to declare a climate emergency. We demand that Joe Biden end fossil fuels and declare a climate emergency, or we will vote for him again. Fam, this was a glorified DNC event. You had the Sunrise Movement that was there, who sheep-herded young climate activists into the Democratic Party, and they were notorious Biden supporters. Fam, they had one of the biggest sellouts of our generation at the event, AOC, and they treated her like a rock star.
We organize out of hope. We organize out of commitment. We organize out of love. We organize out of the beauty of our future.
We organize around the Nord Stream pipeline bomber. Hey, AOC, I'm still waiting for you to answer this question. What is the carbon footprint of the Ukraine proxy war that you continue to vote to fund? Joe Biden is the biggest eco-terrorist in modern human history after blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. Anyone who endorsed Joe Biden should not be allowed at this event. The fact that we have climate activists that continue to prop up the DNC, AOC, and refuse to call out the military-industrial complex shows that they truly don't believe in what they are saying and hurts the legitimacy of their movement.
Ow, ow, hot, keyboard hot after that one. Ow. God damn. Well done.
Yeah, I mean Nick's shorts were always great. He's very quickly mastering the form of the TikTok takedown.
He's about to pass Maryanne in the TikTok charts.
He's about to, which means he should be running for president. I don't know why.
Exactly.
Why
he's huge on TikTok now.
He's very huge on TikTok. Particularly with the demographic that doesn't vote.
Right, exactly.
That's an argument for his candidacy if I ever heard one. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the problem, and this is something we wrestle with a lot on this show. Unfortunately, the cultural signaling of so many people who connect to these causes is so repulsive to so much of the country that it hurts the very cause that they're theoretically fighting for. Right? I mean, what did you say? You want to see a tidal wave coming. So how do right-leaning people feel when they watch that?
Yeah, that last video, I took it off the queue now. That was not a reason to save the human race. That was not a compelling piece of evidence to say that the human race is worth salvaging. Not at all.
Right. Who are these people gonna persuade? Who are they persuading? These are the most cringy, obnoxious people in the country. It's the cowbell left. Unfortunately, and it's not that everybody who cares about that cause is, but the people who are most visible, unfortunately, tend to be. And also, yeah, I mean, it's a DNC rally, right? I mean, what are they?
Well, that's the thing. It's. I mean, I'm sorry. I hate to use this word. I know this word sometimes, it gets overused in this space. But it's a grift. The thing is, they sucker these kids.
AOC wouldn't be there at this point in her career if it were a meaningful threat to power.
Well, yeah, sure. On that end, yes, that's absolutely right. But I'm talking about even that little mini chant that they got going. A lot of those kids, I mean, look, yes, we teased them a little bit. They're kids. I don't mean to beat up on them. They're ultimately victimized here because they're suckered into the same world of bullshit that we were all suckered into when we were 17 years old. Oh, end fossil fuels, get the Republicans out of the way so that the Democrats can save the world, right? They say, oh, that Joe Biden was the subject of a lot of ire. They had signs there saying Biden and fossil fuels, but you had Jamal Bowman speak there. You had AOC speak there. They've both come out and endorsed Joe Biden well ahead of when they would, even as loyal Democrat actors. And then you had, of course, Cornel West there, who was at the front of one of the marches. I don't know how many sort of, I don't want to call them floats. What do they call them? I used to march in marching bands. I played trumpet in high school. I forget what they call them.
Did
Battalions,
you? Never told
something
me
like that. Yeah. I forget what it's called. But anyway.
About my erstwhile companion on the air.
What's that?
I know you played.
Yeah, I played trumpet in high school. I was pretty good. I was very good.
Yeah?
I was in all counties.
Were you like Flight of the Bumblebee good?
I mean, probably not that good. I mean, that's probably, you're talking about decades to master something like that at the proper tempo. But I was pretty good. But anyway, you had Cornel West march there, and then he spoke there. Now, it didn't look like he was on the official docket, but he did get up on one of these little setups here and talk a little bit. We don't have the full speech of that. We don't have the full video because experienced campaign manager Peter Dow didn't manage to tape the whole speech. Apparently, experienced campaign manager seasoned political operative, Peter Dow, who, even though he spent most of his life as a complete scumbag, had to be granted top dog within the Cornel campaign because of all his expertise. Apparently, this expert couldn't bother to film the entire 5 or 6 minute speech that Cornel West gave. So we have 1 minute and 6 seconds of it, thanks to the wonderful, brilliant minds over at the Green Party. So let's take a look at Cornel West's speech.
They're going with the always leave them wanting more principle.
Right, yeah, always leave them wanting more. Exactly. Let's take a look at a little bit of what Cornel West had to say when he grabbed the microphone.
Judge, strange fruit is the blues, that's catastrophe. The problem of our politicians, they think ecological catastrophe is just a problem because they have managerial mentality, something that they can get their hands around and come up with some incremental response as if we're not living on the edge of the cliff. This is catastrophe. This is the blues all the way down. But we all are blues men and blues women because the response of catastrophe is to never allow it to have the last word. We have solidarity in the face of catastrophe. Let us march together. Let us fight together. Let us laugh together. Let us dance together. Let us smile together. Let us cry together. From our indigenous people all across the country and the world, yes, we will not allow the organized greed to have the last word. Love supreme or love supreme.
All right, so look, like this is a common thing I say about Cornel. I love a lot of what he said there. I think talking about solidarity in the face of catastrophe is a beautiful sentiment. Obviously, I think a very, very sharp critique of bureaucratic, technocratic politics, as this is always treated as some problem that certain bureaucrats and technocrats can get their hands around and manage, when really it's much bigger and much profound than they understand or want to communicate. That's all great. I love all that very much, sincerely. But this was assumedly taped from Peter Dow's phone since he posted this video. So A, why didn't you get the whole thing? B, why didn't you have a videographer there taping the guy, right? I mean, if we're going to execute a campaign with strategy and precision and force, this is very likely as big a rally as Cornel will ever get to speak at. I mean, when Howie Hawkins was doing rallies, he was from Albany. His rallies were literally, and I'm not joking, a street corner in Albany with 8 or 9 people, right? So if you're at an event here where 75,000 people show up and you get in front of a stage, where is seasoned campaign manager Peter Dow either filming the whole speech on his phone, or how about, as I mentioned on RBN last night, how about spending $100 and getting a videographer there and miking him up and actually getting a video so we can tweet out a full speech of everything he means? That's number 2. Number 3, at the end there, ending on a love supreme, how about I'm Cornel West and I'm running for president of the United States under the Green Party ticket, and we have full of shit Democrats here like AOC and Jamal Bowman who are going to come and talk a good game while endorsing Joe Biden, who's agitating World War III and supporting the military-industrial complex, which has the largest carbon footprint of any human institution on Earth. Where's that? Where are those teeth? Where are those teeth? Again, those teeth are not there. And again, the themes he touched on in that little segment there, where I love that. That's what I love about Cornel West. Solidarity in the face of catastrophe. Like, those are profound themes that he touches on and speaks to them extremely well, and it's very powerful. I don't take that away from him at all. It's part of the reason I admire him. But when you don't have the execution and you don't have the strategy and you don't have the ruthlessness, you're not going to be able to break through in the way that you absolutely need to. And it's very frustrating because now we're starting with the Greens at 4 or 5%. What if we had some of that Machiavellian drive? What if we had some of that attack strategy? Then you could really have something, not just 5%. You could really have something. And so that's what I got.
Okay. So, some people got annoyed with me, including yourself. The first time I said this, you took a shot at me about my incredible DeSantis prognostication. I said when Cornel came out of the gate and he just basically launched his campaign like a stumbling drink, with the fucking with the People's Party, and then with the Green Party, and then with the Anderson Cooper. I said, look, man, he doesn't really seem to have the mind for this. It's not in any way denigrating him. That's a certain kind of mind to run for president, right? That's a certain way of thinking. That's a certain way of looking at the world. Academics, they don't tend to be those kind of people. Right? They're thinkers. They're philosophers, right? He's a philosopher. Philosophers are not notorious for their strategic ability. Marcus Aurelius accepted. It's what we call foreshadowing. But the later piece. He seemed to be very good at this. So you ask, why did he pick Peter Dow? Somebody more savvy, more with their ear to the ground would not have picked Peter Dow.
He didn't even pick Peter Dow. Jill Stein did it. He's so checked out of the process that he didn't even pick the campaign manager. She did.
Okay, so right there, and that harkens back to the whole People's Party thing. It's like, oh, Nick Branis said some nice stuff. Hey, I'm going to launch with the People's Party. He doesn't seem to have really understood the nuances and implications of launching that way. He doesn't seem to have really looked into the alternatives. And hey, when you look at places that he has generally not been willing to go, don't fall into this trap again, man. We did this with Bernie Sanders, right? I have said, as soon as Bernie Sanders did not answer the direct question, can you give an example of Hillary Clinton changing her vote because of corruption? And when he wouldn't answer that, we all should have been out of there, frankly. Everything that happened after that was foreshadowed by that moment.
Right.
So now, don't sit around now with everything that you've seen so far and be like, I can't believe Cornel didn't say this. I can't believe Cornel didn't say that. He's telling you what he will and won't do by what he is and isn't doing.
Right.
By not going up out of, I'm sorry, I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. If he were going to say shit like that, he'd be saying it. He's not going to say it.
What better venue?
Of course.
AOC's right there.
Of course.
Jamal Bowman's right there.
That's
Sunrise Movement's right there.
Right. That is his opportunity to seize the moment and make the post-duopoly case, to make the alternative case. And he is not going to do it. He is a fucking lifelong Democrat. At the end of the day, he's friends with a lot of these people. He's not going to go there. If he were going to go there, he would have gone there. He's not going to go there. Now, am I arguing you shouldn't vote for Cornel? No. I have said before, we have some people we've gone back and forth about from the beginning about Cornel. And I've said, and I'm not reducing him to this, but I'm just saying politically, in theory, stick a hand in a Kermit the Frog puppet, and if it can get over 5%, I'll vote for it. Okay, like it's not. I don't care, really. I'm just looking to break the two-party system, and Cornel, at least, is somebody I like, and I trust his ethics. I trust his intentions. I don't think there's any corruption going on there. I just think he has occupied a very comfortable position within what is ultimately the liberal establishment for most of his career. And there's only so far he's going to go. And if you think he's going to go further than that, I'm sorry, you're kidding yourself. The best prediction of future behavior is past behavior. He's already told you through his behavior, he's not particularly competent at running for president. And he has limitations on where he will go that are going to limit his effectiveness as a spokesperson for a post-duopoly argument. Those are just the facts.
Yeah, and there were a few different stages or podiums there. Apparently, like that wasn't the main one. Obviously, at least it didn't look like it was, because the event itself had an official live stream. Where they did hire a videographer apparently to actually get a clean feed of it. Yeah, and AOC was on that stage.
He got a call from his dealer right in the middle of the speech.
Well, AOC was on that stage. And this wasn't the same stage. But, if AOC, you had to come out there, if you went before AOC and she was within earshot or that stage was within earshot, you needed to make it so that she would be embarrassed to get up there after what you said about her. That's what you'd have to do right there. Right? Because you have this is an audience for you right here, right? It's an audience of young, progressive voters, mostly in a safe blue state because it's in New York. Most of the people in there are from either New York or Jersey, which are both safe blue states. So people who are not going to be particularly anxious about tipping their state to Trump if they vote for you. That's your opportunity to say, hey, why would you vote for these two-faced piece of shit Democrats, some of whom are speaking this afternoon, when you can vote for me?
He should hire you as campaign manager. He could be like, I look out and I see a bunch of people who should get washed into the Hudson. Yeah, right, exactly. I'm praying for a tidal wave right now.
That's what he should get up there. Get up there and say, fuck all y'all. Exactly, yeah. Oh, that would be good.
Seriously, if Cornel West got up there with a bunch of young people and explained to them, you're just being sheepdogged into a party that's never going to do anything. It's just a placebo to get
right. You're going to be going to events like this until you're 80 years old and nothing's going to change.
Can you imagine that? If he got up there and said that, the power of that, but he won't do it.
Right. Exactly. Let's take some super chats, folks. Thank you very much for your kindness and support. Patrick Donahue, thanks for the €10. Kyle and Jenks set up Justice Dems to be a Tea Party of the left. His words. Now he pearl clutches at the thought of upsetting DNC and being marginalized by them now that there's a viable third-party candidate. Yeah, they don't get into much the third-party thing in this video that we're going to play later, but generally, yes, you are correct. And by the way, folks, please hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're over here. Hit that follow button if you're over on Rumble or Rockfin. Make sure you follow us wherever you are. Subscribe, all that good stuff. Kuznetsky saying, thanks for the $2.99. Appreciate that donation, my friend. Britsman, thanks for the $5. I'm a house DJ and own a few Peter Dow remixes from the not from the 90s that slap. Did you guys party in the NYC house or techno club scene back in its heyday? Well, I'm too young to have known it back in its heyday. I don't know about Russell.
I listen, man. When that shit was
a party in the 90s was Rugrats Marathon.
Yeah. When that shit was popular, I was hanging out at the only country bar in the East Village and closing the place down every night. Still there, amazingly, a place called Doc Holiday's on what is that, on 7th and A, I think.
Yes, Doc Holiday's is. I'm pretty sure it's A. Yeah.
All right, I'll tell you a quick Doc Holliday story. So I went in there one night, and back then, you really had like displaced like Southerners hanging out in there.
Right.
And I went in one night. I had just gotten off work. I worked the night shift driving the carriage, and I go in there, and it's this real fucking country type. He goes, "Man, you shouldn't even be in here. You're not a real cowboy." I said, "I'm not a real cowboy, motherfucker. I got $100. Says I'm the only person in here who worked with a horse tonight." You bought me a drink.
There you go. Beautiful. Albert Bormant, thanks for the $10. First time seeing you here. Thank you very much for that. All hail the great horse lord Genghis Cohen, slayer of shitlibs, destroyer of the duopoly, eviscerator of the vanguard. He shall lead us to victory over the Chinese bat soldiers. Oh, okay. So I guess it's not your first time. I guess you know Russell is Mongolian warlord. I apologize for assuming it was your first time here. First time I remember a super chat from you, though. But I won't forget you now that you gave us that one. That was a good one. And where the hell did that come from? Did you just give us that? I think I went out of order. Sorry.
We're all descended from Genghis Khan, right? Isn't that No, seriously. Like everyone's descended from Genghis Khan because he fucking fucked so many women.
Yeah, I was about to say that makes sense.
Not often consensually.
Fixed Russell shells, but sold the singing bowl. Yes, indeed. Did you watch that episode with Bulla? Do you know what he's talking about there?
I did not have any time.
Okay, well, he broadcasted from your apartment, and he bent up your bookshelves so that they were back to the way they were. Yeah, he bent them back. He said the show just wasn't the same with the straight bookshelves. You know,
yeah,
like the Three Stooges when they brought in Shemp to replace Curly. I mean, it was still the Three Stooges, but it wasn't the same show. You know.
You think I need to fuck those shelves back up?
Yeah, exactly. You might have to.
I need to back. Take out the middle support.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Eric Rousseau, thank you. Cenk is an unserious clown on a book tour like Maryanne Williamson. Yeah, Miracle Jesus or Justice is Coming. More like Your Country is Just Not That Into You. Dore's book. Yes, that is Dore's book indeed. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that.
Rich, Dore is definitely, we'll get into it. He's definitely living in that cat's head rent free, man. Jesus.
Indeed. And we will surely get into that. Fushogan, thank you for the $9.99. Can you please finally get Steph Kelton or Steve Grumbine to come on, educate you twos, okay, all of us, on importance of MMT, and Richard Wolff on critical difference between social democracy and socialism. Thank you. Hart, thank you for the donation. I'd love to interview both of those guests, actually. And I do have Stephanie Kelton's book in my house now. I took it out from the library, and, Russell's on vacation, and my life, as you all know, has been quite chaotic lately, so I haven't had a chance to dive into it as much as I wanted to, but I will for sure. But thank you for the donation and the chat. Thanks, Abiding, for the 99 cents. Appreciate that. And Courtney says, because Russell was crazy enough to get up at 3 a.m. for us schmucks. Thank you for the donation, Courtney. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Beautiful. All right, we will get to some more super chats later, as well as Rumble rants. If anybody wants to throw a few bucks in the tip jar over on Rumble, that helps us a lot as well. And our producer, Jake, will find those and flag those, and we can share those on the screen as well as Rockfin. Same deal. So thank you guys all very, very much. Here is a next story of the evening. Next story. Oh, look, it's Kyle's dad. I didn't know Kyle's dad was on TV. I didn't know Kyle Kalinski's father was in the movies. Interesting. That explains why he, has a career. I didn't realize he was a nepo baby, but apparently he is. Apparently Sean Penn, Kyle's father. That's where he gets the hair.
See, he's not a nepo baby, but like he's from out there, right? Like, isn't he's from?
You're talking about Sean Penn?
Sean Penn, isn't he from like an upscale
well, Sean Penn's father was a TV director. He Leo Penn.
That's it. I knew there was some kind of
Yeah, he was an industry guy. Grew up in Hollywood, and yes, indeed. I mean, his father wasn't like a legend, but he was, he's working in the business. Yeah. So here's Sean Penn on Face the Nation. He has a new film coming out. In fact, I think it just came out, called Superpower, which is a documentary on Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian war from the Ukrainian side, obviously. That is now out on Paramount Plus, and so he's been making the rounds promoting that film. And here he is on Face the Nation talking about how the United States has actually shown far too much caution in its support for Ukraine. Here he is.
It's my absolute feeling that the caution with which the United States has pledged support, which seemed, in my reading of February 2022, was like a lean on in the fear of nuclear conflict. Something I think all of us should look very carefully at and understand it, of course, is possible, and that's to be concerning. The likelihood is extremely low, and as one of our witnesses in the film says, are we going to let a gangster with nuclear weapons dictate the way we live?
Oh, well, I mean, it's not like we've done that in the past. He said this in an interview a while back, probably 6-7 months ago, well, are we going to let a gangster with nuclear weapons dictate the way we live? And apparently that was a quote from his movie based on an interview that he had done. He didn't mention that at the time. He kind of passed that off as his own at the time. Of course, the obvious absurdity of that is that the United States is a nuclear-armed gangster power that dictates the way the world runs. And so, once again, he would probably call what I just said an example of whataboutism, even though I'm simply positing the question to Sean Penn, well, if we're a gangster with nuclear power and we impose our will on other countries in a way that you certainly understand was wrong. I mean, Sean Penn was amongst the only vocal critics of the Iraq War at the time in his entire industry. Then how can you advocate for the overthrow of Putin without advocating for the overthrow of the United States government as well? It just makes no sense. That's not whataboutism. That's just an appeal to some sort of logical and moral consistency. So that's one point. The second point is, yeah, I mean, we should be concerned about nuclear war, but not really, because it's not very likely. Well, at a certain point, it's going to become likely. We're seeing reports now that the Pentagon is preparing for an extended war. Projections now inside the halls of power are not that this is going to end anytime soon, but that we are in the very, very early days of it, with almost 500,000 people already dead. And he's up here saying we've been too cautious. Nuclear war, yeah, a risk, but not really. And we have no choice but to fight as long as possible because we can't have nuclear-armed gangster powers running the world. Just absurd.
Well, also, Li Fang just dropped that piece about how Lockheed Martin at its, I think it was at an investor conference, talked about how this is going to be generating profits for the rest of the decade. So that doesn't mean that's the case, but it shows you how they're thinking. It shows you what they're looking forward to. This is what Eisenhower warned us of in his infamous final speech, that the military-industrial complex, a phrase he coined in that speech, could end up taking over the country. We're there. And that's what's really terrifying about this, because they have every incentive to see this not only continue, but escalate into other countries. They have every incentive to start getting the former Eastern Bloc countries into this war, right? That's more countries to arm. That's more people you can sell your wares to. That's all these psychopaths care about. It's hard to, going back to the climate rally where AOC keeps voting for this, it's hard to save a nuclear irradiated climate. Not going to save any climate. Now with Sean Penn, I have heard rumors that he's actually working for the studios because every time he shows up, support for the actors goes down. So that might be what this is all about.
Yeah, subliminal scabbing. You know what I mean?
That's it. He's convincing people we don't really want the actors to come out on top of this. I've said this before, and there are exceptions. Actors, as a rule, are the last fucking people you want out there opining on complex geopolitical matters. That's not how their minds work. That's why they're not directors. That's why they're actors, right? They're impulsive, they're emotional, they're intuitive, they're feeling. They do not tend to have the kind of intelligence you'd want somebody who's holding forth on something like this to have.
But he wasn't like that back in the day. I mean, I'm not saying he was a genius back then and he's lost some mental power now, but he at least had the instinct to know that Iraq was bullshit. And, he stuck up for Chavez. He was an outsider, truly. And to see the only Iraq war critic in Hollywood, really, he was it. I mean, he and maybe Tim Robbins, Susan Sarandon, but it was a handful, it's a very small handful. He was certainly the most famous of them. To see him just become the most rabid hawk for World War III is just
Well,
incredible. That's the power of Trump for you. I'm telling you, that's what it is. It's Trump derangement syndrome. That's it. He's got it. So many people have it, and that really is the only way I can really explain it.
I think it's also in keeping with what I'm saying. He's an actor, man. It's what he's feeling right now. He was feeling that about Iraq before. He's feeling this about Ukraine now.
Well,
That's
because
how
Trump
actors
elicits such a strong emotional response in people.
Right. They don't have a consistent intellectual framework. And it's kind of an occupational hazard. Look, you're going to be a better actor if you have that kind of flexibility, but it's not great for developing a strong core personality, right? Because you're being trained to take whatever impressions you're getting and just take them on yourself and then project them back out, right? Like it's not, that is not a mindset that you want in somebody who is jumping out and talking about what direction we should take as a society. I am definitely of the mind actors should sit down and shut the fuck up, because for the most part, they don't have anything to contribute to the conversation. And Sean Penn is a perfect example of that. There's something a lot of people who analyze like the death of the movie star talk about. They say the death of the movie star, and I think there's more to it than that, but there's definitely an element of it. Twitter. It was much better when the studios managed and handled these people and limited their public comments. You only really heard them emote on Barbara Walters every now and then, and that was a big deal because you never heard what they really thought, right? And very often it would actually result in controversy, because that's why the Barbara Walters specials were such a big deal, because a lot of these people are fucking idiots. So when Barbara Walters would get them to open up and start talking, a lot of times people would be like, oh, I don't really like that person. I thought I did, but now I realize who they are. You hand these freaking people these phones where they can tell you what they think about every subject every time of every day. It destroyed the mystique of the movie star. And it also exposed to people, these are not the brave, these are not the sharpest knives in the drawer. Most of these people are not people who, you would particularly admire or look up to or find exceptional or interesting. Sean Penn running around talking about, well, look, yeah, you could have nuclear war, but come on, what are the odds? That is a perfect example of how Hollywood was better off when studios had guys like Sean Penn on a very tight leash and told them what interviews to do and what they're going to talk about. They are this unelected elite that have this enormous platform and no idea how to properly use it.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. 100%. And the one of the other ironies of this, and this does not sort of contradict your point because the point is bigger than this, but Sean Penn is not on social media. Sean Penn doesn't even have a computer, he says. He could barely work a computer. He's one of these like Luddites. But point still stands. Alrighty, folks. So
he's making up for it.
Right, yeah, exactly. Let's take this Rumble rant here from Bonzo Beans. Thanks for the $2. All options on the table. U.S. foreign policy in a nutshell. Thank you, Bonzo Beans. Appreciate that very much. Rumble rant. Here's a YouTube super chat from Corey Weichman. Thanks for the $9.99. Russell's bookshelf belongs on this island. Oh, yeah. I can't, because architecturally. Good one. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate that. We'll take one more here. Fushogun, thanks for the $4.99. I don't think Chris Hedges, another academic, would have been as soft or conciliatory as Cornel West at the climate march or in interviews, etc. Yeah, he's been kind of laying low. It's kind of surprising because he was involved in persuading Cornel to run green, and then we haven't really heard much from him since then. So I would be interested to hear him chime in on some of this stuff. I'm assuming he'll want to at some point. Can't imagine why he wouldn't. But let's do a segment here that is, you talk about kismet, you talk about perfect timing, because this has been trending. How often do men think about ancient Rome? Quite frequently, it seems. This is from the Washington Post. I don't know if you guys knew of this TikTok trend here, but this is WAPO. It's been almost 2,000 years since the Roman Empire reached the historic peak of its power, but many men still contemplate it quite a lot. A new social media trend prompting women to ask the men in their lives how often they think about ancient Rome reveals that it crosses the minds of many men on a weekly basis, even daily or more, to the surprise and confusion of their loved ones. 3 times a day, answered one woman's fiance in a TikTok video. There's so much to think about, he explained, eliciting, a stunned look into the camera from his soon-to-be wife. They built an entire world-dominating society, another man exclaimed when asked by a bewildered-looking woman to justify why he contemplates, ancient Rome. But why does there seem to be a gender divide, and who is daydreaming about ancient Rome today? According to historians, one explanation could be that Western societies have historically overemphasized the aspects of Roman history that are associated with masculinity in the popular imagination. The first thing that comes to mind is an image of the Roman legion, the imperial eagle, and that sort of military aspect, along with gladiators, which has a long association with masculinity and power, says Hannah Cornwell, a historian of the ancient world at Britain's Birmingham University. Since at least the 19th century, she said, historians have tended to view ancient Rome through the prism of politics and warfare, in part as a result of their reliance on elite masculine sources. The slew of videos on TikTok appear to have been prompted by Artur Hulu, a 32-year-old Roman reenactor and history influencer from Sweden who has earned a large following. Known as Gaius Flavius or Gaius Flavius online, I don't know which one, where he posts videos of himself as a...
Gaius.
Gaius? All right, well, Gaius Flavius makes the joke work at least. Where he posts videos of himself as a Roman legionnaire and performs comedy sketches as a gladiator. Hulu wrote on Instagram, "Ladies, many of you do not realize how often men think about the Roman Empire. You will be surprised by their answer." So here is a picture of the influencer who apparently got this trend started. But let's take a look on TikTok, just a little sampling of what we're talking about here.
Do you think about the Roman Empire?
How often do I think about it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess technically like every day.
Do you think about the Roman Empire ever?
Yeah, I guess sometimes.
How often?
I don't know. Once a week. How do you not think about the Roman Empire? Basically.
How many times, like a week, or just how many times in general, do you think about the Roman Empire?
What about the Roman Empire?
Just anything about it.
Probably not a lot. Why?
Not a lot? When was the last time you thought about it?
Maybe a week or two ago. The Roman Empire was a very big part of history.
So how often do you think about it?
Not a lot.
How often? Once every month?
Maybe 3 or 4 times a month.
You think about the Roman Empire once a week?
It has a lot of big, like, stories and lessons, like, within the Roman Empire of what to do and what not to do. So, yeah.
So you think about the Roman Empire once a week?
Sometimes, yeah.
That's like the Dave Chappelle, Rick James interview where he's like, yeah, you know, I took my, Eddie Murphy, he said I took my I kept my shoes on and put my feet up on his couch. Now, why would I do that? I mean, I did do that, it's like that. He just changes his story. Well, yeah, I did it. I never think about it. Oh, yeah, I mean, I think about it a little bit, like 3 or 4 times a month. Like, yeah, like once a week. Yeah, that's my favorite one because I'll watch a couple more.
Not necessary.
Ed, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
This depends. I don't know, every couple days.
Are you kidding me?
I don't know, once a week. Why?
Why?
I don't know, a lot of history.
How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, how often?
At least once a day.
Right, so that's enough there. I will toss to my friend Russell to see what he has to say about this.
You know, the first rule of the Roman Empire is you don't talk about the Roman Empire.
Right.
You know, these guys all fucked up. You know, men have had a secret society of Roman Empire, you know, worship for 2,000 years, and they gave up the game. TikTok, you know.
Yep.
So
that'll do it.
You know, let's put things in order. This is what really bothers me about this. These are the same exact people who are going to say, don't stereotype based on gender, right?
Right.
And yet they're unleashing this really unfair stereotype against men. And, you know, I don't think that we're defined by our gender in that way. I think it's ridiculous to say that men have a weird fixation on the Roman Empire, or that men might, you know, dream their entire lives of seeing Roman ruins and then go see all of them and spend 8 or 9 hours at the Forum. You know, most men will not do that. And hey, what about women? What about women who might do that? Why would you say that's an exclusively male thing? I mean, just because somebody has a thing specifically about the Emperor Caracalla, who ruled from 198 to 217 AD after murdering his brother. Hey, the guy created the Antonine Constitution that extended citizenship to all Romans. What? That's not a big deal? That's not a big deal to you? If that's not a big deal to you, I think that's your problem. That sounds like a you problem. On top of that, hey, anybody ever seen The Godfather? This guy whacked his brother. He was originally co-emperor after their father died, whacks him out, takes over, introduces a new currency. You know, it's a very complex history. But to say that that's a male kind of thing, you know, I mean, you're gendering history. You can't gender history that way. That's not appropriate. And we won't stand for that on this show. We're not going to put up with that kind of thing here. We are non-binary Caracalla fans here.
I'm glad you had a chance to speak on that so we can clear that up, because I can say, in all honesty, I don't think about the Roman Empire very much. Like, hardly ever. Honestly, this is not the bit anymore. I really don't. Maybe, I mean, until you said you were going there, I don't know. If I had to guess, maybe once a month. But only in the context of imperial decline, because that's what we're going through now. Like, I don't think about it as much as these other guys. I don't know why that is. I have a theory, which is that the Roman Empire is probably a stand-in for other men. You know, how often do you think about other men? Well, not that often. Once a week. You know, I think the Roman Empire was a bit gay. And I think that people who think about it a lot are also a bit gay. Not, as Jerry Seinfeld would say, that there's anything wrong with that. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I see a parallel there.
And that is how we have kept this secret for 2,000 years. So if any of you get asked by your girlfriend, if you think about the Roman Empire, go back and watch how artfully Keaton handled that.
Right.
And that's what you do, guys. We need to shut this thing down. We're giving away the family secrets. We have been conspiring for 2,000 years to bring back the Roman eagle. God damn it. And now this whole thing's getting blown up.
See, Russell knew TikTok was trouble. You were on that from a while ago. You said it's only a matter of time before TikTok causes big problems. And here we are.
And we're our obsession with the Roman Empire. Okay, so my not bit honest take. My personal interest with the Roman Empire started with a movie I understand they're about to remaster, Caligula. I saw Caligula for the first time tripping on acid when I was like 17. And that fucked me up for life. Okay, so Caligula was a movie that sounds like a punchline, but it's for real. Okay, so it's this really, what, in my opinion, this really good screenplay by Gore Vidal wrote it, actually.
Right.
And it's very, it's very masterpiece theater, very classy, very I, Claudius, all-star cast. You got John Gielgud, you have Peter O'Toole as Tiberius, you have Malcolm McDowell in his prime, perfectly cast as Caligula. Helen Moran is in this movie. Just absolute all-star cast. But it was produced by Bob Guccione, the owner of Hustler magazine. So what Bob Guccione apparently decided to do after he saw the cut, he was like, hey, we need a little more fucking here. We need some fucking. So he went and got porn actors,
right,
and shot all of these XXX scenes and inserted them into the completed film. So what you've got is this very strange thing where you've got this very elegant writing from Gore Vidal, and you've got the perfect actors to execute his lines. I love him like a brother, Lord. In our family, a brother kills a brother who's killed his father, who's killed his son. And then in the next scene, you got somebody sucking a cock in a back room.
Yeah, penthouse, they said. Penthouse, not Hustler.
Oh, penthouse.
People in the chat are saying that.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I forget. That's Flint is a Hustler.
Right.
Now, a lot of what's going on in this movie, that's what's weird about it, because Caligula really did make the senators give their wives up to an imperial brothel to balance the treasury. Like, that really happened. So, of course, Guccione takes that as an opportunity to show what went on in that brothel. Right? It's very strange because in a way you're like, well, this was the perfect fusion of talents to create perhaps the most accurate movie about what Caligula's reign was like that you could possibly make. Only Bob Guccione, working with Gore Vidal and Peter O'Toole, could have made such an accurate movie about the reign of Caligula, because no legitimate person would ever have done this.
Right.
That was actually, when I saw that when I was a kid, I was pretty ignorant of history, classical history and culture. That was really my first exposure to the Roman Empire. Now, I will tell you, walking around these ruins has definitely brought home to me, why was I so interested in seeing these ruins? And I'm still seeing more ruins, and these were Greek ruins I was looking at today, not Roman ruins. I wasn't less interested. I was actually more interested because I had it more to myself. So it's not about Rome, it's about apocalypse. That's what I realized actually doing this. If you're fascinated by end of the world, apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic worlds, you're probably going to be fascinated by walking through the results of another culture's apocalypse.
Right? Sure.
Because that is, you're seeing what someone's apocalypse looks like.
Right.
Delos was raided by pirates in 69 AD. That's part of why it was abandoned. Dude, you're walking around, there's the broken amphora. There's the broken containers still laying on the ground. You can still see the burn marks from what the pirates did. It's fucking incredible, man. It's like to see what it looks like when a world ends. Because you're talking about such, and I think Rome is particularly interesting in that way, because they had such a complex, all-encompassing society with an aesthetic, with a philosophy, with an economic system, with an architecture. That was the world. And especially as an American, I think we're fascinated by this because that's us, right? We have that kind of cultural hegemony over the rest of the world. So to go see what it looks like when that world ends is fascinating. I don't know if it's so much, I mean, for me personally, I don't know if it's so much Rome as it is apocalypse and what it looks like when something that solid falls apart.
There we go. We were on a little bit of a delay, so we didn't get the whole thing, but we just crossed it right as you ended that monologue. So very good timing and good monologue, but save the rest for TikTok.
Well, no. I mean, part of what I'm taking a lot more pictures and videos than I necessarily would, because I am going to do a lengthy video essay about some of the insights I've gained from these experiences when I get back.
Very cool. Very cool. That'll be fun. Courtney says, I even hired a videographer on the campaign I managed. The Libertarians. Yes, indeed. Good call. Folks, we want to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters and paid Substack subscribers. Russell has not seen this yet, but our producer Jake made us up this really cool thing where we actually now have a scroll on our website with all of our Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers. So,
nice.
Thank you, Jake, for making that up. Appreciate that. And you can go to patreon.com/do dissidents. We had Emily and Scotty sign up this week. So we are getting closer, folks, to our goal of 500 supporters, 500 paid subscribers. What's that? Go ahead.
I just want to say one last thing on this, because I could see people are talking about the Rome thing. I just want to say one last thing about this that I kept hearing when I was in Italy that I thought was a really interesting insight. People kept saying Rome never actually fell. It became the Catholic Church. Basically, the Roman Empire lasted forever by mutating into the church.
By mutating, right. That's interesting. Interesting idea there. Folks, go to patreon.com/do dissidents and help support our show. Once we get to 500 subscribers, we will add a 4th weekly stream. I know that seems like a tall order, 500, but we're getting there. We're up over 300 now, so it might take till the end of the year, however long it takes. We will add a 4th stream once we get there, and that is something we're very much looking forward to. You can go to Patreon and sign up, or you can go to dodissidents.substack.com and sign up over there as well. It's just $5 a month. You get all sorts of perks. You get your name on this lovely scroll here. You also get call-in access to all of our regularly scheduled live streams, as well as access to 2 supporter exclusive streams per month. Our next one is going to be this Saturday, September 23rd. We're going to do a matinee because Russell is overseas. We're going to be doing it at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So this will be a Saturday matinee for our patrons. And obviously, if you missed the show live, we leave it up just as you can catch one of these live streams after the fact. You can do the same thing over there. But this Saturday at 4 p.m. So a lot of Do Dissidents to catch if you're a patron. You got tonight. We're going to be on on Friday morning, 9 a.m. with the great Danny Haifong is going to be filling in for Russell as a co-host. So we're really looking forward to that. Danny Haifong will be joining us 9 a.m. bright and early for Morning Dew this Friday. And then we will be on Saturday at 4 and then back again Sunday at 7. So lots coming up. Very, very busy schedule. Had a lot of fun. I did on the Post-duopoly show last night, so we've been definitely putting in the time this week, but we hope you've all been enjoying. Here's Eric Husso. Thanks for the $5. Penn's new film, Brokeback Mariupol. It stars Sean Penn and his love interest, Volodymyr Zelensky. Can the Russians stymie their unspeakable love? Yeah, Zelensky was in town this week at the UN. That's definitely something that Danny and I are going to be covering on Sunday because he was here in New York this week. Thank you, Albert. Appreciate the $10. Kit over at Hardlands Media constantly calls us his lovelies, his mornings, and his sunshines. Yes, I know. You haven't complimented us in years. And last week when we changed our hair, you didn't even notice. Hey, I changed my hair last week. How many of you guys noticed? Did you notice, Albert? Thank you, Albert, for the $10. I appreciate it. We'll try to butter you guys up a little more. Yeah, I got a haircut this week. I know a couple of you guys noticed in the chat.
Freaks, weirdos, convicts,
yeah,
layabouts.
Yeah, Exactly.
Well,
All right, let's get into some stuff here. We got a few more topics that we got to cover tonight. This one we were going to do last, but we actually bumped this up because it became a trending topic again, a certain aspect of this, right before we went live. So, a few days ago, as we all know, Russell Brand put out a video insinuating that some allegations were coming down the pike. I know many of you guys have seen this already, but let's take a look just to catch everybody up just in case.
Wonders.
See, Russell Brand calls you Awakening Wonder. See, he compliments the audience too. It's not just Kit from Hardlands. Yes, indeed.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Now, this isn't the usual type of video we make on this channel where we critique, attack, and undermine the news in all its corruption, because in this story, I am the news. I've received two extremely disturbing letters, or a letter and an email, one from a mainstream media TV company, one from a newspaper, listing a litany of extremely egregious and aggressive attacks, as well as some pretty stupid stuff, like my community festival should be stopped, that I shouldn't be able to attack mainstream media narratives on this channel. But amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. These allegations pertain to the time when I was working in the mainstream, when I was in the newspapers all the time, when I was in the movies, and as I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent. And I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play? Particularly when we've seen coordinated media attacks before, like with Joe Rogan when he dared to take a medicine that the mainstream media didn't approve of. And we saw a spate of headlines from media outlets across the world using the same language. I'm aware that you guys have been saying in the comments for a while, watch out, Russell, they're coming for you, you're getting too close to the truth. Russell Brand did not kill himself. I know that a year ago there was a spate of articles, Russell Brand's a conspiracy theorist, Russell Brand's right wing. I'm aware of news media making phone calls, sending letters to people I know for ages and ages. It's been clear to me, or at least it feels to me, like there's a serious and concerted agenda to control these kind of spaces and these kind of voices. And I mean my voice along with your voice. I don't mind them using my books and my stand-up to talk about my promiscuous, consensual conduct in the past. What I seriously refute are these very, very serious criminal allegations. Also, it's worth mentioning that there are witnesses whose evidence directly contradicts the narratives that these two mainstream media outlets are trying to construct, apparently in what seems to me to be a coordinated attack. Now, I don't want to get into this any further because of the serious nature of the allegations, but I feel like I'm being attacked, and plainly they are working very closely together. We are obviously going to look into this matter because it's very, very serious. In the meantime, I want you to stay close, stay awake, but more important than any of that, if you can, please stay free.
All right, so it's only fair that we played that entire thing all the way through. But then, sure enough, obviously, we all know what happened. This is the BBC reporting. I tried to get the Times London original report on this, but once again, they even paywalled that, the bastards. So, yeah. Russell Brand accused of rape and sexual assault. BBC comedian and actor Russell Brand. This was that same day, obviously. It was actually after he put out that video, so he tried to get out in front of this as best he could. Comedian and actor Russell Brand has been accused of rape, sexual assaults, and emotional abuse during a 7-year period at the height of his fame. The allegations were made in a joint investigation by the Sunday Times, the Times, and Channel 4's dispatches. 4 women are alleging sexual assaults between 2006 and 2013. Brand has denied the allegations and said his relationships have been, quote, always consensual. So they outlined it here. Several women have made allegations against Brand as part of the investigation. One woman alleges that Brand raped her against the wall in his L.A. home. She was treated at a rape crisis center on that same day. The Times says it has seen medical records to support this. A second woman alleges that Brand assaulted her while he was in his early 30s and she was 16 and still at school. She alleges he referred to her as the child during an emotionally abusive and controlling relationship. A third woman claims that Brand sexually assaulted her while she worked with him in Los Angeles and that he threatened to take legal action if she told anyone about the allegation. The fourth woman alleged being sexually assaulted by Brand and him being physically and emotionally abusive towards her. So that came out, and then obviously we had the onslaught of cancellation and censorship. Russell Brand's YouTube channel demonetized, shows pulled from BBC. Paramount Plus removes Russell Brand comedy special after assault allegations. BBC, as the other headline referred to here, it is in the Hollywood Reporter, removes Russell Brand content, saying it now falls below public expectations. So, this is a situation where I think, from what I've been seeing, I think a lot of people in our space are getting this more or less right, which is one thing we know for sure is that the allegations are serious. One thing we know for sure is that Russell Brand has made very powerful enemies. And then beyond that, there are things we don't know, which is the veracity of the allegations themselves. We don't know if it was known that these allegations were out there earlier, but those allegations were sat on while he was making these movie studios a lot of money as a Hollywood star. And now that he's gone rogue, well, now we can use this to try and get rid of him. Those are things we all don't know. Those are all things that I think are very valid to suspect, especially since the video, the documentary that the Times put out, looked quite Hollywood. CJ made this point when he played it on the air, which now apparently even the BBC is not allowed to play it. I don't know if they rights blocked it or whatever. But they hired actors to retell the stories, very cinematic music and cut scenes. It was a very dramatic presentation, which is not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the people making the allegations, because if you're going to report things, you have to report something like this in a straightforward way, because if you demonstrate a bias or a slant or an agenda, then that undermines people's confidence that what you're saying is true. And if these allegations are true, then that's not fair to the victims either. But the other thing I can absolutely say is that this demonstrates more than anything the danger of censorship and the danger of big tech, because I'm sorry, we love being here on YouTube. We love YouTube. We adore Google. But they are not the trial. They are not the jury, judge, and executioner here. There's an allegation that's been made. The allegations will be looked into, and there's a process to see whether or not a person is guilty or innocent of what they are charged with. It is not for giant tech monopolies to weigh in and decide that your off-camera content deems you ineligible to work on the platforms. And yes, work on the platforms. Brianna Joy Gray and Max Blumenthal did a little debate about this earlier, where she kept asking, okay, well, does YouTube have the obligation to monetize everybody? Well, no, they don't have the obligation to monetize everybody. But if you look at some of the people who are monetized on YouTube, they're people whose names I don't want to mention, not for fear of violating the YouTube community guidelines, but for fear of violating the Gambino crime family's community guidelines, if you know what I mean. like there are people I don't want to mention like that who are on YouTube getting paid by Google to be on YouTube. So the idea that they would just shut your operation down in that critical way, based on a one-off allegation, yes, it absolutely is Orwellian. It's absolutely totalitarian. And it absolutely sets an unbelievably dangerous precedent. I mean, I won't name names because I don't even want to go there when it comes to all this stuff, because that's the kind of thing maybe I'm a little superstitious, but I think to myself, God forbid, don't even put it out into the universe. There are people with very big followings in our space who have made a lot of people very angry in their lives on all sides of the spectrum. And what this sets the precedent of is, well, if you don't like who they are, if you don't like what they're about, you can get them shut down with an allegation. Right. And so this speaks nothing as to whether or not the allegations are true or not. I tend not to opine on that. You know, when I opined on the Andrew Callahan thing, which a lot of you guys got very pissed off at me for coming out and saying I believe the women on day one, that was the exception. I don't usually do that. I did that day because I was reviewing his film and the allegations were fresh, and I figured it would be disrespectful to ignore them entirely given that they were out there. And on the day those allegations surfaced, you had documented evidence of multiple women telling very similar stories to multiple people off the record, and you had his friend, Ethan Klein, go on YouTube that day and say, Andrew just called me from a psych ward. He told me the stories are accurate. So in that case, the evidence was overwhelming immediately, and notice none of the people who gave me shit for saying so have had much to say about that story ever since, because that was the rare case where overwhelming evidence came out very quickly and I felt very comfortable weighing in. This is not one of those situations. So I am not weighing in. I am saying it is not Google's place, Paramount's place, or the BBC's place to weigh in quickly either. You cannot have trial by Twitter, trial by Google, trial by Paramount, or trial by the BBC. You have to have the closest thing you can get to due process. I understand it's not always easy, especially with these kinds of charges, but that's why you have a system in place, is to adjudicate things like this in a proper way so that there are not these severe knee-jerk reactions that happen within hours of news breaking that someone has been accused of a terrible thing.
Yeah, obviously this raises the whole question of the Me Too project and its intentions versus its consequences. Anybody who's looked at the statistics, or I had a friend who worked in a rape crisis center at one point. She would tell me a lot about what went on there. But if you just look at the numbers, look, Me Too was a response to the statistical reality that because rape or sexual assault is so difficult to prove, it's almost impossible to prosecute. It's almost impossible to successfully prosecute in the absence of hard physical evidence, because it always comes down to he said, she said, and we have a system of jurisprudence that errs on the side of reasonable doubt, right? So how do you prove if there's no physical evidence that an assault took place, right? Me Too was a response to that problem by taking these kinds of allegations to the public and basically turning to the public to mete out a justice that our justice system, under its core premises of innocent until proven guilty and guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, can't really deal with. It just really can't. The problem with that is what we see here. First of all, you inevitably, when you start turning to mob justice and extrajudicial process for determining guilt and innocence, obviously you're going to sweep up a lot of innocent people in that net. That's why we don't do things that way. That's why we have a judicial system, as flawed as it might be, because as flawed as the judicial system might be, the mob is even worse, as we've seen again and again in history. So very quickly, what was a response to a legitimate problem turned into a witch hunt that rounded up the innocent along with the guilty. Even, not anybody's favorite person, I'm sure, on this channel, George Takei, got swept up in one of those accusations. I saw people screaming, "Don't repost George Takei. He's an abuser. He's a rapist," right? I mean,
Jordan Sheridan, there's a name we all know and most of you guys don't like very much. He was falsely accused.
Right. He got swept up in that. So you have some of, beyond the just clear philosophical problem with it, because it inverts. I had this debate with somebody who was very, very extreme, to the point that it was about personal issues, I felt. for, lynching everybody and going after anybody who's accused of anything. And, she actually, to her credit, was honest. Most of them, when you push them on, what do you do about innocent people who get accused? Generally, they would, avoid that question. She said straight out, it's worth it if some innocent people get caught up, as long as they get. I mean, that is your core premise when you start going this way.
Well, it's inevitable that eventually you have to ask yourself that, right?
Of course you're going to. Right. Well, the basic premises of Me Too in its extreme form, it inverts the idea better that 10 guilty people go free than one innocent person be in prison. It inverts that. Better that one innocent person get imprisoned than that 10 guilty people go free. That's the basic premise you're going with when you start going after people extrajudicially this way.
That's certainly true. I think one of the things about, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. You froze and I thought you were done. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. In the case of Russell Brand, what we have now is the worst sectors of society, as they will, are taking complete advantage of the standards that I think originally well-meaning activists have established to believe women and to make people face consequences extrajudicially that they might not be able to impose on them through a legal action. And they're seizing on it to silence people that they don't want speaking. And it is very, I saw Greenwald's piece about this. He brought up Alex Morse, if anyone remembers, who was the candidate in Massachusetts.
He was primarying Richie Neal, who's one of the most corrupt Democrats in the House, and that's not an easy title to achieve. But, yes.
Yeah, a lot of stiff competition for that. Falsely accused, and all of these groups dropped him immediately. I think Justice Democrats was one of them that originally backed him and dropped him like a hot potato as soon as he gets accused. So this is what we have to remember. Look at the position that, forget about Russell Brand, just broadly, look at the power that you're giving to the establishment by disowning anybody who's accused. You cannot create an environment where accusation equals guilt. And unfortunately, that is the inevitable outcome of a believe women standard. That's different from a listen to women standard. That is a fair standard. Take women seriously standard. Believe women, that's not a fair standard. That's not a meaningful standard, because then scumbags can go get women who have a grudge maybe. And I'm not saying that's the case here. I have no idea. Nobody does. But theoretically, you can get women who have a story to tell, don't like somebody, or mad, have resentments, whatever, and use that to shut down voices that you do not want out there. With Russell Brand, who knows? Look, the guy was a junkie for years. I'm sure he was a big fucking man whore in those days.
Well, he says he was. There's no speculation.
Yeah, I mean, sure, a good-looking, famous Hollywood junkie. Yeah, man. Being abusive, I mean, that doesn't rise to a criminal standard. Things like that. I've also seen videos of women who said they were contacted for this and they had only positive things to say and they weren't used for this. So that's where it's also, it's not, it's not like they're trying to do journalism. Something else, you have people trying to drum up a narrative that he literally created a channel questioning authority and undermining belief in the media in anticipation of one day getting accused of these things and being able to, I mean, talk about the long game.
Well, talk about a conspiracy theory, because that's the charge they throw at him. Okay, so this guy went through the trouble of building a political channel all in anticipation that one day this would come at him and that he'd have
That's
people
insane.
defending him. It's totally insane. I mean, that doesn't even
Well,
warrant a response. That's how
but-
crazy that is.
Well, it's a terrible plan. I mean, the best way to protect yourself is to be a good boy and support Joe Biden. Look at Joe Biden. He's
You're right.
he's
Exactly.
been very
credibly accused, right?
sexual assault. He's the fucking president.
Bill Clinton still speaks at these events. He's still
Right.
out there, right?
I promise you, all these people who are saying shut down Russell Brand support Joe Biden.
Right. Exactly. But there's a development of this that broke late. So forgive me, I didn't have a chance to make a formal exhibit of this, but we will do this as a screen share. And this is why I shouted out Rumble at the start of the show. So thank you all over there for watching us over on Rumble. And if you're watching on YouTube, go follow us on Rumble. It's very, very important that you're following us multiple places. So Rumble tweeted out that they received this letter from the UK Parliament, the Culture, Media, and Sport Committee. Dear Chris, this is to Chris Pavlovsky, CEO and co-founder of the Rumble platform. Dear Chris, I am writing concerning the serious allegations regarding Russell Brand in the context of his being a content provider on Rumble with more than 1.4 million followers. Pardon me. The Culture, Media, and Sport Committee is raising questions with the broadcasters and production companies who previously employed Mr. Brand to examine both the culture of the industry in the past and whether that culture still prevails today. However, we are also looking at his use of social media, including on Rumble, where he issued his preemptive response to the accusations made against him by the Sunday Times and Channel 4's dispatches. While we recognize that Rumble is not the creator of the content published by Mr. Brand, we are concerned that he may be able to profit from his content on the platform. We're concerned that he may be able to profit from his content on the platform. We would be grateful if you could confirm whether Mr. Brand is able to monetize his content, including his video relating to the serious accusations against him. If so, we would like to know whether Rumble intends to join YouTube in suspending Mr. Brand's ability to earn money on the platform. We would also like to know what Rumble is doing to ensure that creators are not able to use the platform to undermine the welfare of victims of inappropriate and potentially illegal behavior. Yours sincerely, Dame Caroline Denage, whatever the hell her name is. So now Rumble sends back a statement. Today we received an extremely disturbing letter from a committee chair in the UK Parliament. While Rumble obviously deplores sexual assault, rape, and all serious crimes and believe that both alleged victims and the accused are entitled to a full and serious investigation, it is vital to note that recent allegations against Russell Brand have nothing to do with content on Rumble's platform. Just yesterday, YouTube announced that based solely on these media accusations, it was barring Mr. Brand from monetizing his video content. Rumble stands for very different values. We have devoted ourselves to the vital cause of defending a free internet, meaning an internet where no one arbitrarily dictates which ideas can or cannot be heard, or which citizens may or may not be entitled to a platform. We regard it as deeply inappropriate and dangerous that the UK Parliament would attempt to control who is allowed to speak on our platform or to earn a living from doing so. Singling out an individual and demanding his ban is even more disturbing, given the absence of any connection between the allegations and his content on Rumble. We don't agree with the behavior of many Rumble creators, but we refuse to penalize them for actions that have nothing to do with our platform. Although it may be politically and socially easier for Rumble to join a cancel culture mob, doing so would be a violation of our company's values and mission. We emphatically reject the UK Parliament's demands. Beautiful. I mean, that's how you got to be. That's how you got to be, and good on them for that. Like I said, go ahead.
How terrifying and insane that they would write a letter like that. And this is where it, where did I see this? Was this in the Cenk Brie thing, where they were having a conversation about how some people are turning to the right because they've been so
Yeah, that's a
anger
part of
by,
what we'll
by,
cover
by
there.
the
Yeah,
left.
a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, well, who the fuck owns Rumble? Peter Thiel, right? This
Well, he's not a
conservative.
total owner now, but there's some money behind it. Yeah.
Okay. So you see George Soros taking stands like that? Like, do you see an equivalent Democrat donor billionaire person, Bill Gates, taking a stand like that? No, quite the opposite. So actually, Brianna, I think, and I think she was masterful in that interview, but I think she mischaracterized some of what's going on there. And she did not get into the fact that it's not so easy to say what the right and left are anymore, right? Like it's not simply having your feelings hurt. That was kind of how she made it out. That like, oh, you're mad at these people, so you're going to cozy up to those people. I think it's more complicated than that, as we can see here. I would love to see a letter like that from someone on the other side, but from an organization funded by people who are left or left adjacent, but you don't. Who's taking stands like that for speech? If speech is really a core deal-breaking kind of issue for you, you can't support the Democrats, because the Democrats would just at Plaskett and Schultz, you could see them writing a letter like that. They sent the fucking IRS to Matt Taibbi's house the day he testified in fucking Congress. These are the not fascists that we're supposed to support against the fascists. Who are the fascists? They're all fascists. It's a question of what flavor of fascism you're talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, yeah, good on Rumble for doing that.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them, because
this is what we're going to have to do, because it gives them total control over who gets to speak. They're always going to be able to weaponize these cultural and social issues against anyone they don't like. A guy like Russell Brand, you can always find people. And again, I'm not saying the women aren't telling the truth, but I'm saying it's easy enough to find people who were not happy with that person.
It happens a lot. I mean, we were talking offline with one of our friends here on the show, and they were saying how this is just, it happens so often. Jimmy Dore tweeted out, these are the easiest accusations to level at somebody, because they're the hardest to investigate. They're the hardest to prove. And when it becomes just an automatic cancellation based solely on the accusation, everyone is a sitting duck. Everyone.
Right. And that is why we cannot respond in that way to these kinds of accusations. We just can't. It's too dangerous a road to go down. We have got to fall back on innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, and I read some of the text exchanges between one of the accusers and Russell Brand, which have been made public, and someone, a very, very well-known audience member in our chat here, who's here in the chat right now. I won't say who you are, because I don't know if you want us to mention this on the show, although you did tweet it out publicly, so I'm assuming you're comfortable talking about it. Talked about how the chat messages may constitute a battery charge with regard to, sex without a condom when she wanted him to use a condom. Like, there could be a charge there. Like, we're not saying that's nothing, but the person who I'm referring to said, who is a woman, by the way, I will cite that, said that she does not think that constitutes rape, right? It might constitute some illegal thing, right? Some assault, a battery, whatever. But look, it's not for me to litigate that. I don't feel comfortable litigating that. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, how to really approach that in a way that I feel confident I could get that right. But I just did want to mention that there is some evidence out there for people to review and make their own decisions about whether or not they want to support Russell Brand or not. Like, that's fair. Like, everybody can make their decision whether they want to continue to support that content creator or consume their content. That's for everybody to make on their own. That's their call to make. When the platform flips the switch, they're making that decision for everybody. And they should not be empowered to do that. And the dangerous thing about these big tech companies is that they have the power to do that, and they are not accountable to anybody. And a lot of these have the protections of Section 230 that they should not have, based on the fact that they do make editorial decisions. Well, we like this person, so we'll keep them on. Oh, we don't like what this person does off camera, so we have to shut the lights out on them. Right? Once again, this is at this point, these are allegations. Once they become adjudicated, whatever, then there's another layer to it. Right now, you're in the very early stages where these are just allegations, and we've already had 3 platforms cancel him based on the allegations alone. And that creates an environment where, yes, everyone with a platform is a sitting duck. Everyone with a platform is a target, and they can be disappeared with an accusation all by itself. So anyway, I think we covered that the way we needed to. Let's take some more super chats here while we're still monetized. While we still got them coming in. Sean Penn's Iraq War opposition. But seriously, folks.
Tonight, my friend.
What's that?
You're tempting the fates. Tonight,
yeah, right, exactly. Sean Penn's Iraq War opposition got him made into a puppet in the Team America World Police. Yes, he was made a puppet in that movie. That's right. That's right. A few others were made puppets in that movie as well. Abiding. Thanks for the 99 cents. Appreciate that very much. Albert Bormans, thank you for the $20. Appreciate that. In all seriousness, I've been watching this show for about a year, and I really enjoy it. Well, thank you. You two offer a unique perspective due to your occupations and age disparity. Interesting. Okay. Backhanded compliment to Mr. Davila there.
Since we've been doing the show, it's very Benjamin Button. I'm getting younger.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Now I'm getting older. My first ever use of Super Chat. Well, thank you for that first ever use of Super Chat. Keep up the good work. Will do, Albert. Thank you, guys, very, very much. Derek, thanks for the $5. Appreciate that. And how long till AOC calls for punishing or shutting down Rumble? Yeah, exactly. Never know. And there. Courtney, okay. See, I didn't want to out you because I didn't know if you wanted it known. But yes, Courtney was the one who tweeted about this. And you should go follow her on Twitter to see more of what she had to say. See there, Courtney? Got a little plug out of it, too. I didn't like that. 131 viewers over there on Rumble, so thank you guys very much for tuning in. We want to thank Jake in the booth for fielding our Rumble rants and Rockfin tips, so thank you guys very much for being here. All right, 2 more segments to go before the end of the night. This was a debate on Rising between Brianna Joy Gray and Cenk Uygur. The whole segment is about 28 minutes. The portion with Brie is about 15 minutes. We took the last 7 minutes or so to comment on. So just to set this up a bit, Cenk Uygur was there to promote his new book called Justice is Coming, which is all about his pet dog named Justice. No, it was actually about... it's about his experience founding the Justice Democrats, and the premise of Justice Democrats, which is that there's going to be this progressive takeover of the Democratic Party, and that not only will the party love it, but the country can't wait for the progressive agenda to arrive through insurgent primary campaigns inside the Democratic Party, and he lays out a sort of blueprint for that vision. Now, keep in mind, he's been hawking this book for the past couple of years, okay? He mentioned he was working on this book a very long time ago, and now it's just getting set to come out, and so he's on a little press tour. But Brianna Joy Gray challenged him in the sense that she said, well, you know, it's been said by a lot of people that TYT has recently not lived up to the premise of even the Justice Democrats' ethos, because people have accused them of selling out and sort of becoming just more, you know, an arm of the Democratic Party come general election season. They've lost their teeth as, you know, insurgents and stuff like that. So she's sort of challenging not just the premise of the book, not even so much the premise of the book, but whether or not Cenk has remained loyal to the ethos of the book. So that's where we pick up here. So let's take a listen. And this is, you know, there's about 7 minutes here, so we'll obviously stop and start as we go.
I mean, Cenk, I think specifically one of the moments that I remember of TYT being characterized as no longer capturing the spirit of the Justice Democrats or what the Justice Democrats were supposed to do was the moment around Force the Vote, where there was a push for the elected squad members to take an adversarial relationship to the Democratic Party and Nancy Pelosi specifically, to withhold their votes for them the same way that we've now seen the Freedom Caucus model with withholding their votes for Kevin McCarthy at the beginning of this year, really testing the theory of how that would work and getting in return a number of concessions that I think we can all acknowledge would be amazing for the left to have achieved. And at that time, despite there being a poll that TYT put out of its audience, where a majority of the TYT audience seemed to support Force the Vote, the newscasters, the personalities on the show, were very much against it. And as I'm sure you can remember,
vast majority of the audience, I think like 85% of the audience in that poll supported Force the Vote. But as you can see, he's getting angry. You can see he's getting hot already. So let's see how he responds.
That caused a significant rift down the left that persists in many ways. What do you say to that? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, it's crazy. But thank you for bringing it up, because I'm happy to address it and try to clarify it the best I can. Guys, do I look like I don't want to force votes? Of course I do, right?
You look like you want to eat a whole chicken.
You do look like you don't want to force votes. You know why? Because you refuse to force votes. That's why. Like, the level of gaslighting on display here is quite epic. Not just gaslighting, but flat out dishonesty and rewriting of history.
I think it's time
as
for you to
we
start
get
to
into.
seriously consider salads.
Yeah, exactly. All right, here we go.
Right? And I tell every congressperson that's going into Congress for the first time, if they'll listen to me, I tell them, you have to create what the civil rights movement called good trouble. Now, that doesn't mean you go in wildly and flailing around doing impractical things, but it means you come up with a coordinated strategy, you then create good trouble, and then you put a spotlight on an issue where you are on the winning end of it, popularity-wise. So, for example, one of the things we did with Justice Democrats is as soon as AOC won, we did a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office. That put Green New Deal on the map. That put Sunrise Movement on the map. And in a lot of ways, it reinforced Justice Democrats being on.
Okay, well, first of all, Sunrise Movement was very quick to sell out as soon as they realized that they had to in order to keep donations coming in. Number two, our friend Kit, who's in the chat here, by the way, shout out to Kit Cabello and Heartlands Media. He was on the Post-duopoly show with CJ and myself last night. He made a very good point, which kind of went over my head, that AOC didn't really plan that sit-in with the Green New Deal activists and the Sunrise kids. She showed up to the office and they were there and she joined them. But that was not something that Cenk Uygur said, hey, I have an idea. Let's coordinate a protest inside Nancy Pelosi's office. That's not how it happened. He's taking credit for that now. He didn't have anything to do with that. She just happened to join it in the moment.
I mean, I took it as the royal we.
You mean like AOC? Like he's sort of, taking credit through her?
Yeah, like our movement.
Our movement.
Our movement collectively. That's what we did. I don't know if he was literally directly taking credit there, to be fair. But what he's really eliding is, okay, so what the fuck's AOC doing now?
Right.
What you doing now? When was the last time?
What's the Sunrise Movement doing now?
Yeah, what are they doing? What are any of these people doing now? If anything, all the people you're naming are an argument against the tactic you're advocating.
Exactly.
On the map. I want you to take those kind of actions, but you have to actually use your mind and independent judgment as to which action to take. So Force the Vote, Jimmy comes to me. Back then, we're still friends and allies. And I go, oh, look, it sounds like a pretty good idea. Okay, I definitely want to do something where we're forcing action, right? So what's your plan, Jimmy? He's like, well, we're going to force the vote and we're going to, get Medicare for all. I'm like, brother, I want Medicare for all. But you have to take steps.
Not true. Not true.
That I'm sure that's exactly what happened. That was the conversation. Jimmy Dore told you that if you do this, you're going to get Medicare for all. Come on, man. He never said that on his show.
No.
Why wouldn't he say that? What?
We all know that's an absolute lie.
You guys?
Right. It was very clear what the purpose was. The purpose was to force it into the national conversation, which it would have done in a very powerful way, because if you look at the attention that the Republican forced the vote commanded, it was, what was that? 5 days, 4 days of just wall-to-wall coverage about how McCarthy was being embarrassed, right? And they were talking nonstop, 24 hours a day, about what the Freedom Caucus was demanding from leadership. And so that gave a lot of oxygen to the new church committee, which they ended up forming. That's the weaponization of the federal government that has produced a lot of the hearings that we've been covering since then, right? So imagine you had a week's worth of TV footage devoted entirely to Nancy Pelosi refuses to grant a floor vote on Medicare for all, right? Imagine the oxygen that would have created for that issue. That's at the worst. That's at the worst. At best, you actually win more concessions, right? They could have had a number of things, not with the goal of actually winning them in the moment, but with the goal of forcing leadership's hands to raise the stakes on these issues by calling for votes and getting people on the record. If you're heading up Justice Democrats, how could you not want that? Because what could give your organization more ammunition than getting dozens of corporate Democrats on record opposing Medicare for all? What a fundraising boon that would be for Justice Democrats, for our revolution, because now they would come away with that with dozens of races that they want to run, and they would recruit candidates and they'd raise money, right? How could you be against? How could you possibly be against that? It makes no sense that you would be against that.
Well, that's where these fucks talk out of both sides of their mouths, because if you really believe in the politics that you're talking about, you would have backed Force the Vote, because we'd be living in a different universe. Force the Vote was one of those pivotal moments where if they had gone one way, their support would have gotten even stronger. The people who supported them would have doubled down on them. They went the other way, and it largely broke faith in this entire political project. It broke faith in the squad. The final break was the infrastructure bill, when they allowed them to decouple it. That was really the final collapse of support. But that was a major, major moment that turned people off to this entire approach to politics. You yourself helped to burn down the approach that you're talking about right now, because you showed people in that moment that you're full of shit. The people you advocate for are full of shit. The people that you've helped get in office are full of shit. So nobody will listen to you now. And he in the end, he knows that. He has no good answer for it. That's why he has to turn this whole segment into a litigation of Jimmy Dore's character, which, by the way, he's doing a great Jordan impression here, because I had no idea how infected with Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome this prick is. But Jesus Christ, Jesus fucking Christ, man. Because look, Cenk, we call out the untalented, but we'll acknowledge talent where it's present. Cenk's a talented broadcaster. He's smarter than this. Like, this seems like, one, he doesn't know how to get out of this question, and two, wow, does he fucking hate Jimmy Dore, and three, you don't hate someone that much if you really think they're crazy, if you really think they have nothing to say. He hates Jimmy Dore so much because he's a rebuke of this entire political project that he claims to be supporting and a part of. And deep down, he is afraid that he's right. Like, you don't care when you don't take somebody seriously, you don't get this fucking animated about what they say and what they do. They're just not even on your radar, right? You're like, eh. Right? The fact that he's getting this worked up, come on, man. That is the main proponent of a counter argument against everything that's, I'm sure, is in his little book. And if you look at how he responded to it when given the opportunity, he has no response. he really has no response to Jimmy Dore's argument other than ad hominem attacks.
Right. Yeah, indeed. And it goes on.
You have to take steps. If you go straight to Medicare for all, you have a 0% chance of it passing, and you're going to waste the power and the leverage. And who are you going to get as Speaker of the House? And he's like, I don't know. That's your strategy?
No,
I'm not going to agree with a moron who has no strategy, no plan, not at all practical. We could have forced a vote on $15 minimum wage, and we could have won that vote.
Okay, so that is just obviously a barrage of lies from Jimmy said we were going to get Medicare for all. No, we didn't. To you're going to waste the leverage. No, you wouldn't. To this last one here, which is $15 minimum wage. We could have won that. What are you talking about? First of all,
he's just pulling that out of his prodigious ass.
Well, it's not. It's worse than that. It's worse than that. Because forced to vote was in January of 2021, and we were talking about forcing the vote for House Speaker. We were talking about forcing the direction of the Democratic House of Representatives, not the Senate. So if you recall, and in case you don't recall, I brought a receipt for this, Democrats passed the $15 minimum wage bill through the House in July 2019. If you look, that's the date at the very bottom of that headline. The Democratic House already passed the minimum wage at the time that forced the vote was being litigated. So when he says, we could have got a $15 minimum wage, hey, schmuck, the House already passed the $15 minimum wage. The House went on to pass the $15 minimum wage through the Build Back Better bill later that year. We lost the $15 minimum wage because the Democrats in the Senate allowed the parliamentarian to block it. That had nothing whatsoever to do with force to vote. So why would you force a vote on a $15 minimum wage bill when here, 2 years prior, there's Nancy Pelosi touting the House passage of the $15 minimum wage bill? So again, that is just an outrageous lie that he told there. And this headline proves that. There's no way to know that the Democrats passed the $15 minimum wage 2 years before forced to vote and argue that forced to vote should have been about the minimum wage. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. And I believe he knows that. He's counting on the fact, he's counting on the hope that a lot of people watching that don't know that.
Which brings us to, does he actually believe in the politics he's advocating? Which we talked about this before. You know, I got the impression that he does, but to even believe what he claims he believes, you have to delude yourself. I think he's lying, but I also think he believes in his overall premise that this is the way you do it. But it's also a lot more convenient to believe that premise than it is to go in the Jimmy Dore direction. You make a lot of enemies that way. This way, you get to have it both ways. You get to be an ineffectual guy with a show, rather than somebody with a message that's actually challenging to people in the establishment and authority. He says several times in this conversation with Brianna, about, do I seem like a guy who supports the establishment? You seem like a guy that the establishment uses to pretend that there's a point to participating in their game. That's what you see.
Well, exactly. And I don't think he feels like this strategy is really viable anymore. I think he feels like it's the closest any strategy can come to viable that he's willing to support because it protects his place within the system.
Right.
And so he has to try and gaslight people into buying into it because the alternative would be to do something more radical, which would, of course, jeopardize his place within that media world. So we got more. Let's keep going.
Instead, the force of vote were like, yeah, well, you didn't do what I wanted. Okay, then I'm out. I'm not going to help you guys actually get the bills that we all want. Oh, come on, man, grow up.
No, so Cenk, I would point out that
again, that's really not true. On one of our audience's members' recommendation from Post-duopoly last night, I actually went and I couldn't watch the whole thing. Obviously, it was 6 hours long, but I just perused some highlights of the roundtable that Katie Halper called together to do Force the Vote. It was Jimmy Dore was on it, Matt Stoller was on it, Brianna Joy Gray was on it, a few others. And it got heated at times over the course of 6 hours, but there was a discussion to be had. There was, you know, Jimmy, Brianna, they were not my way or the highway, take my ball and go home. They sat and they had it out and they talked through it and they argued and it was very spirited, but that was part of the process. The idea that they turned you away because they were my way or the highway is nonsense. I'm sure they'd have been happy to host you as part of that roundtable.
Sure.
You didn't show up. You didn't show up because you rejected it out of hand because you knew where it would eventually lead. You knew it would lead to these candidates at the end of the day who you propped up having egg on their face because ultimately the reality of that whole situation was Cenk Uygur and all of the force the vote deniers or the force the vote skeptics, they were against it really because they did not trust that AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, they did not trust that they had the backbone to follow it through to the end. And they were afraid that if they started it, that they would become very embarrassed at the end of it when they eventually would cave. The way guys like Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert did not cave. They only gave Kevin McCarthy that speakership when he gave them some things. And even those things were not enough because now they're threatening to bounce him again. We covered that last show. He knew that these guys didn't have it in them to do what the Freedom Caucus did to their party leadership. And they knew that at the end of the day, their candidates who they were counting on to carry the banner of organizations like Our Revolution and Justice Democrats, he knew they would end up embarrassing themselves. And that's why he couldn't go through with it. And they got to come up with all these excuses and now lie about it 2 years later to make it sound like maybe they'd have been more open to it if only Jimmy Dore were nicer. You know?
Well, and this is why all of these people who came to the forefront as part of the Sanders movement, including Bernie Sanders himself, just need to be laughed at and ignored. I mean, they're ridiculous. They've all shown us that when the moment of truth comes, they're gonna blink. We've had several moments here where we really could have actually made some progress in the direction that Cenk is suggesting. And at those moments, they always blink. So shut the fuck up about this already. You had your chance. You had your chance. You should have
put the book out 2 years ago when we probably all would have bought it. 3 years ago. You know?
Yeah, who's gonna read this fucking
Who's gonna
book
read this book at this point?
Like, I look at this and I'm like, okay, I mean, the audience for this book is really not progressives. It's libs who want to feel like they're welcoming in fresh blood, right? And
well, yeah.
voice.
Well, the ultimate thing is,
and they're not going to buy it either because you're giving too many mixed messages. You're not going to be able to sell this to the Michelle Obama autobiography crowd.
Especially since the Michelle Obama autobiography crowd can buy Ryan Grimm's book instead, because Ryan Grimm has a book on the squad coming out now at the same time as his book. So why would these people read a bullshit book by a lousy writer like Cenk Uygur when they could read a bullshit book by a talented writer like Ryan Grimm? I mean, Ryan Grimm's a much better writer than Cenk Uygur. So if you were going to read this bullshit book and you had the good version of the bullshit book by Ryan Grimm and, you know, the high school writing level version by Cenk Uygur, why would you read Cenk's book? It's funny how they're both going out at the same time, both a few years too late.
Well, and not only that, in terms of what I'm saying, Ryan Grimm's book has a lot more appeal to that crowd because all of the squad have been defanged and they've all kind of been rehabilitated to lesser and greater extents for the MSNBC crowd. So that really fulfills that, yeah, see, we're making progress. Look at all these diverse women of color we're empowering, and they all call Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear. So they're not a rebuke of my basic politics like I thought they were. They're actually one of us. There's nothing those people like more than a convert.
Yeah, no, indeed.
McCarthy is still Speaker of the House. The issue was not whether or not Nancy Pelosi would necessarily become Speaker. The left, people
Brianna,
like yourselves. Wait a minute.
Who is
Cenk,
going to replace
could,
Nancy Pelosi?
Cenk,
Did you guys have a candidate? Who?
Cenk, if I could.
Again, a lie. Nobody was.
Like what the fuck are you saying? Like Nancy Pelosi can't be replaced? Like what? What? That
wasn't even the plan. I think that could have been a plan. Like, I would have liked that plan probably even a little better than force the vote, which is just refuse to vote for her outright, right? Well,
that's what real radicals would have done. They would have refused to have Nancy Pelosi as
just
the Speaker.
No, forget it. No force
That's
anything.
it.
Right.
If they were fucking serious, if they were serious in the way that those of us who supported them thought they were, that's exactly what they would have done. That's what I would do. That's what you would do. That's what most of our fucking audience would do if they weren't in prison.
If they had the right to vote.
If they had the right to
vote. They were still allowed to vote.
Funny enough, they're still allowed to run for office, though.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, here we go.
The right-wing caucus got a number of meaningful concessions, regardless.
But that's not what we were going for, Brianna. That's exactly the problem. If they said, let's go for meaningful concessions, I would have been in.
That's exactly what they said they were going for, and you know that. Again, just another blatant, obvious lie. I mean, it's just one after another, after another. What do you mean they weren't It was called force the vote. That was the hashtag. So what do you mean they weren't going for meaningful concessions? It wasn't hashtag bounce Pelosi. It wasn't we refuse to vote for Pelosi under any circumstances. The whole premise was we're going to force her to give us a vote on Medicare for all. Now, if you had a different ask, you could have tabled a different ask, but they never made any such counter offer. He's saying the minimum wage would have been a better offer, but of course he didn't promote that at the time because he couldn't, because as I just proved, the Democrats had already passed a minimum wage bill at that time through the House. And so there'd been no point in doing that.
They said, we're going to get Medicare for all.
Cenk,
sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your characterization of what happened, I think is reflective.
If we pause it every time he lies, we'll never get through this. So I'm going to let it breathe.
I mean, this whole thing is amazing. Like, your brand is about being a progressive, and you're up there saying who would replace Nancy Pelosi? What? I mean, for that kind of analysis, you can go to the New York Times op-ed page.
Right. Exactly.
Of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left at the time.
I want to back it up a little bit because she kind of nails him here. In too many words. I mean, she says this is emblematic of a lack of grace. She should have just said you're a liar. Like, you're lying.
Sure,
that's a much simpler version of what the response could have been. Go ahead. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, since we're getting into one of our best moments. Brianna was really great in this interview because Cenk is a big, fat fucking blowhard, and he's not easy to manage in an interview, and she does it. You know, she works the fish. You know, she gives him a little line when she has to, when she sees she's not going to shut him up. But then she goes right back onto her points. This was Brianna at her best. This interview, I thought she was great throughout.
Yeah, indeed.
They said, we're going to get Medicare for all.
Cenk,
sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your characterization of what happened, I think, is reflective of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left at the time. And I think if people had been less motivated by the personal animosities against each other, it seemed that Jimmy Dore, you've expressed some animosity toward him several times during our short conversation here. I do think if those personal animosities weren't at play, maybe we could have been in a world where you were listening to myself, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, other figures on the Cornel West, Chris Hedges, who were also advocating for this and who were being very clear that there were any number of demands. I wrote an article in Current Affairs that set all of this out contemporaneously, so you can go back and look, that it wasn't this idea that we were going to hold the vote and magically get Medicare for all. And to the extent that that was your presumption
Brianna,
or your belief, I do think that is a real problem with communication on the left.
That you guys wanted at the time. Name one other concession. At the time, don't make it up.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, folks, Russell's on a little bit of a delay because he's halfway around the world. So if the timing is a little awkward, I apologize. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, then he goes to filibustering her. Brianna, you know it was. I mean, that's all tactics, right? To imply to the audience that there's some secret knowledge between them, right? Oh, come on, Brianna, between you and me, what does she know? She literally just said you can go back and look at my article.
Right.
The fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? Yeah, it's just this whole segment is incredible. Like, clearly he knew that he was going to have to address this to try to sell this fucking steaming pile of shit he wrote. And there is no good way out of it. But you would think he could have come up with something better than this. Like, everything he's saying is so easily disprovable. As you say, it was called force the vote. Like, the whole premise was to force a vote, not to get Medicare for all. Nobody thought that. Like, who said that?
Right. Exactly.
Up now. At the time, name one other thing you guys want.
I invite you and the rest of the audience to go look at an article I wrote in Current Affairs magazine in November of 2020, in which I consulted with David Sirota.
Also, it doesn't matter if there was another concession. Let's say there were no other concessions that they were asking for. You just said 2 minutes ago they weren't asking for concessions. You just said 2 minutes ago it was a doomed strategy because there was no alternative to Nancy Pelosi who was plausible. And now she's saying, well, actually, I wrote this article about alternative concessions. Well, name one besides Medicare for all. Well, 2 minutes ago, you weren't even agreeing to that premise, right? And now here you are.
And included a list of subsequent ancillary demands that he had written up in his own publication. And I linked to them and say that these are also important. The important thing is that we need to demand something in exchange for our votes. But we don't need to rehash that. Go ahead. I'll give you the last.
No, I need to say one last thing,
respond.
Brianna. I need to say one last thing. You guys make it sound like we're the ones who have animus. No, be clear about how this thing started. As I told you in the beginning, I said, well, that's interesting.
Okay, so that's another tactic. She was focusing in on specifics, and he decided, let's broaden out the argument as now we're going to go back and litigate who was nicer, right? We're going to turn it from an argument about the specifics to something very vague and very sort of emotional and therefore very sort of amorphous. Which is who was meaner? Who was meaner? Who started it? Who started the fight?
It's so fucking juvenile. It's so juvenile. It's so inside baseball. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? I'm watching this as a right winger. I'm very happy. Oh, these are the people representing the left. Goody. And yet, Jesus Christ, don't start. They're not the left. We know. Right. Don't start. They're going to be all over that in the comment section. They're not the left. We know. That's the point. But unfortunately, they are much more visible than what one might consider the real left.
Right. Interesting. Let's have a conversation about strategy. And the minute I said, let's have a conversation about strategy, Jimmy said that we were taking money from the CIA and Nancy Pelosi. You just mentioned David Sirota. He also attacked David Sirota. He also attacked Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! and insinuated she was working with the CIA. So then I thought, well, no, I'm not going to work with a lunatic who thinks that Amy Goodman might be working.
Now, look, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know when Jimmy accused him of working for the CIA. First of all, if Jimmy did accuse him of that, I would have to disagree with Jimmy there because I don't think the CIA would entrust someone with this big a fucking mouth and this short a fuse with any privileged information that they did not want out there or to do their bidding. Maybe Amy Goodman. She seems like she's fairly level-headed. This guy, they're going to trust this guy in like the Burn After Reading movie. They would trust the CIA would partner up with him. But I don't remember that happening. I did remember there was a YouTube video where Max Blumenthal was talking about with Jimmy Dore about how a lot of their critics were connected with, Google because Google's YouTube and everything like that. So there was an insinuation of a certain sort of connection there. But that was a year after Force the Vote. So unless unless he's talking about something I don't remember, I don't know that he was ever accused of working for the CIA. And again, you think the CIA is going to trust this fucking guy? This guy gets mild pushback from Brianna Joy Gray. He almost blows his top. Yeah, I don't know if he's the best recruit.
Amy Goodman was accused at one point of garroting an opposition leader in Brazil. But there's never been any hard evidence.
Hard evidence of that. Right.
Yeah, most people don't take it seriously. This whole thing, it gets really pathetic. Jimmy, you know what Jimmy did? One time I gave him change for the meter and he didn't even give it back to me. Shut the fuck up, man. Shut the fuck up. Nobody cares about your personal fucking small dick beef with fucking Jimmy Dore.
I gave him the company credit card. I sent him to Starbucks. I said, get yourself a grande. He got a venti on the company card.
Yeah.
Didn't even ask. Didn't even ask.
Venti.
Didn't offer to pay the difference. Just brought the pack and drank it right in my face. Right in front of my face, he drank it.
It just degenerates into this just very childish whining about Jimmy Dore. I mean, clearly Jimmy's living in his head rent free. And again, that tells me a lot about the fact that you're intimidated by him and you feel that he's, worst interpretation, he doesn't believe any of this, and Jimmy's undermining his grift. I think it's more psychologically complicated than that, but I think it still goes back to he's undermining his grift, right? There's somebody out there calling out the obvious flaws in your argument who has a bigger platform. I would hypothesize, I'm pretty sure, and not in sub counts, but in viewers. I'm pretty sure Jimmy pulls in more viewers than the Young Turks do.
Yeah.
Like
I'd be almost positive of that.
People who actually watch his show.
Yeah.
Subscribe to
Certainly viewers per video. I mean, the TYT has all these million sister shows that who knows. But in terms of per video view count, theirs has to be lower than his by now. Has to be.
Right. So that's probably pissing him off. And Jimmy's out there to offer a counter argument, and it really clearly puts a fucking bug up his ass. I mean, look at him at the end of this interview, man, because Cenk has skills. He knows better. That's the thing. He knows better. He's got to know this doesn't make you look good to be sitting here talking about how much you hate Jimmy Dore. You know what else he said? And you know what else he did? That helps your argument? No, it just makes you look like a childish asshole with no real rebuttal to what you just said.
Yeah, no, of course. Absolutely. Check, everybody. Check. How many likes we got on YouTube? I'm checking on my phone right now. Let's see. We have 887 strong in the chat. 469 likes. Let's bounce that up. Let's get to 666 likes so we can hit the Iron Maiden again. How's that? 666. That only means, not even half. You got to hit that button. Hit that like button. If you're over on Rumble, hit that like button. Hit the follow button on Rumble. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube so you make sure you stay in touch with us. Very important. All right, here we go.
Working with the CIA. And second of all, I didn't start the fight. This lunatic comes in frothing at the mouth. I'm being funded by CIA. And Nancy Pelosi. How are you supposed to have a rational conversation with an absolute lunatic like that?
This is the point I made on Post-duopoly show last night, too. I distinctly remember, and Kit backed me up on this because I hadn't watched the video in a long time, obviously. But I distinctly remember when Jimmy came up with the forced to vote idea, he specifically said that he was willing to bury the hatchet and let bygones be bygones with anyone who joined him on this. He said, past conflicts will be water under the bridge if we unite on this issue. He specifically said that. So the idea that he came in frothing at the mouth and accusing everybody who questioned him of being funded by the CIA is, again, just another very egregious untruth. In the first video, he said, I forget the exact wording, but Kit backed me up on this last night. He said, whoever wants to partner on this, I will partner with. Whatever we said in the past to each other, we'll let that go. And so, again, he came in frothing at the mouth. No. Again, the videos are all up there. This is what you were saying. It's not like people can't go back and check this. It's very, very obvious. It's fresh in a lot of our memories, but even the parts of this that aren't are very easily checkable. And yet here he is.
And then you guys think we started it? Are you insane?
I didn't say you started it. I don't care about the personalities. Cenk, you're talking about personalities. I'm talking about issues. All I know is that David Sirota supported Force the Vote. I had him on my podcast talking about it many times.
That's not true.
Yes, he did.
No,
and he
didn't.
continues to be an advocate that I value and respect a great deal. And he is able, as a mature person, to tease away his personal feelings about human beings that he might share an idea with or a strategy with, and the underlying strategy. And I really do hope that we see more of that on the left and less of a focus on who it is that's delivering a certain kind of a message, especially if you're right, Cenk, and it's going to require a united and powerful independent media force in order to actually ever get a progressive into office. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking through some of these tough issues.
No problem. And you guys are funded by the CIA. But I'm sure you won't take offense at that. So just be cool. Let's agree on policies. But you're obviously, Brianna have bought her house, has a Mercedes and a Rolls Royce, all funded by Hillary Clinton and the CIA. But it's cool. Let's stay friends.
About the only thing Brianna has convinced me of on this show is that there is, in fact, more dysfunction on the left than on the right. And today is a good example of that. Thank you very much, Cenk.
That, unfortunately, is true.
And that's exactly what Russell just said. If you're a right-winger looking at this, as Robbie is and was looking at it, that's the exact conclusion you would come away with.
That end was just pathetic. Well, what if I called you a CIA plant? Would you be friends with me? Would you be cool with that? Come on, man. What a fucking childish asshole. This is why they have to put Anna out front. She I would think, I don't even know what she advocates at this point, but I would think she would have handled herself in that interview a little bit better than he did.
Yes, I imagine that's true. And honestly, now that you mention her, I don't recall where she stood in any of that. I don't remember her injecting herself into that debate very much. But I could be wrong. I just don't have.
I mean, at this point, she's kind of the face of the network, right? Like, he goes on, but not as much as she does. Isn't she more like the central host at this point?
I have no idea because I do not watch.
No,
so
neither really. But whenever a Young Turk story comes up, it's usually she's taking the lead in the video.
All right. Yeah.
That's where I'm getting that impression.
I guess so. I guess that makes sense. Yes.
I haven't sat down and watched the Young Turks for non-work purposes in fucking years. Couldn't tell you the last time.
I don't watch any of this shit for non-work purposes anymore. It's all work now. It's all a write-off now. I listen to music for non-work purposes now. That's about it. That's everything.
Yeah, no, that was just absolutely horrific. Like, that, I don't understand why all these people have such a fucking thing about Jimmy Dore. Like, if you really, I'm not saying you have to agree with his point of view. I'm not even saying you have to like him. This obsession that these people seem to have with him. Like, if you really just don't agree with him or don't like him, don't fucking, don't talk about him. Like, why are you even you're platforming him when you do that? Like, why does the mention of
well, they're
this
also
person,
platforming themselves. I mean, they do generate a lot of attention for themselves by, doing what the Vanguard figured they could do. They figured out they could do.
Well, if they do a hit piece video, but not in the middle of an interview like
right,
this,
to just bring them up like that, right?
Foaming at the mouth. Like,
right, Cenk doesn't need to leech clicks off the Rising.
Right, exactly. When Jordan was on our show, somebody made that compilation of how many times he said Jimmy Dore. What was it like? It was like 54 or something.
54, 55 times. Yeah.
And then he said to me, Dore, like, what is that doing for you? What is that doing for your reputation? I never understand that. Like, dude, or even if you want to dismantle someone's arguments, the best way to do that is coolly and dispassionately.
Right.
When
Exactly.
When you start descending into, okay, well, this is what Jimmy says, and this is why I think he's wrong. Okay, fine. When you start going, oh, yeah, and this lunatic starts saying that I'm I mean, anyone's taking you seriously right now? Unreal. And Brianna was great. Brianna was great.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people. We have a lot of fans of hers, and hey, I'm a fan of hers. I am just saying, there's no fucking way that she doesn't know about the staff members resigning and putting out that letter, and she's still running around saying, "I love Maryanne."
Someone tagged us in a tweet, by the way. Another staffer just left and started shit talking the campaign, whose name was not on the original letter, because someone tagged us in that. So look into that.
I mean, I want to put together a compilation, because Cenk does it in this interview too. If there's one thing all the richest commentators in the so-called progressive YouTube space agree on, it's that they don't give a flying fuck about Maryanne's history of abusing her staff. They don't give a flying fuck about all of these staff members coming out and begging people not to work for the campaign because of the abuse that they suffered. None of them give a fuck. This is one thing they all are very comfortable with covering for Maryanne. I would really like to know why. I am more and more suspecting this is a Rosemary's Baby situation, that when the cameras are off, they all get naked and run around with ram's horns and right. Throw blood around. You got Cenk, you got Brie, you got Crystal and Kyle there, all doing some kind of bizarre ritual with a paring knife. Because I really don't understand why not one of them. This is the one thing they all agree on. Cenk praises Maryanne Williamson to the heavens in this interview. It's one thing him and Brie can agree on. It's just incredible to me. All these people claim to care about labor and care about workers, and not one of them gives a fuck about this.
Yeah. Indeed. Nicole, thank you for the €5. Hello from France. Just so you know, Macron banned Rumble in France. Yes, I heard that. I did hear that. So,
oh, did it?
A French audience will have to remain here for the time being. But thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. Derek, thanks for the $5. For what it's worth, YouTuber That Umbrella Guy uncovered that the text messages were doctored. See, you're talking about the Russell Brand thing. See, that's something I could not report on because I just don't know. I mean, I'll look into it. Thank you. But that's not something I could confirm or refute. I just can't chime in on that if I'm hearing it just now. But I will look into it. Thank you. Albert, thanks for the $5. LOL, no respect to Russell. No disrespect to Russell. None taken, my friend. I love him. I like that this show has multi-generational perspective. There you go. That's a nice way of putting it. It adds more depth to the analysis. Thank you, Albert.
I didn't take offense. I took it exactly that way.
We're ball busters.
Look, I mean, I never understand. Like, we don't get too much of this anymore. We used to get more of like the ageist kind of attacks when we started. What, like, you don't want somebody who's actually experienced some of the things of the past to talk about politics? Like, you only want to hear it from like 22-year-olds? Like, that never made any sense to me. Yeah. Like, I mean, some people do, but we've gotten that. Sometimes I've seen comments that lump us both in like that, where they're calling you old.
Me old. Well, it depends on my beard and my hair, because when I shave, I look like I'm in my early 20s, and when now, I feel I look my age. I'm 36. I feel like I look 36 now. But yeah, when I shave and I have short hair, people say I look like college kid.
I mean, Well, it's interesting. I think it also probably, I don't know what other channels' demographics are, but when you look at our demographics, I think it does help to pull in some people who are older onto our channel.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Gen Xers. You know what I mean?
Right,
Indeed.
exactly.
Tusker, thanks for the $5. Finally leaving work. Glad I made it in time for the Brie Jenk segment. Hello, fellow dissidents. Well, hello, Tusker. Good to see you home.
What's up?
From work. Janice Anderson, thanks for the $4.99. AOC didn't join the sit-in, I'm assuming. She just ran into them on her way to Pelosi's office and told them she was proud of them. Cenk is trying to reinvent history. I know that was a spur-of-the-moment thing. Dell0373, thank you for the donation. Cenk acts like a progressive Mike Lindell. Yeah, drama as fuck. Yeah, that's interesting because now that you mentioned it, yeah, do similar presentations. Justin Watson, MMT is a fantasy under a capitalist dictatorship. Well, like I said, I did actually start reading that book, but I will, now that things are a little calmer, and knock on wood, hopefully we'll get a little calmer, I should finish it soon. Zach Boyles, thanks for the $4.99. It's not egg on her face, AOC, I mean. It's some epic Korean sunscreen. Sure, it fails blocking a speakership, but it can end the rain of harmful UV. By the way, Russell has something to say about European sunscreen over there because, yeah, you did look like you got a little burnt up out there.
Yeah, okay, so
Does it hurt? Like, are you in pain now because of that? Do you rub any aloe on it? Do you treat it at all or no? Because he was looking pretty red. It wasn't just like tan, it was red.
Yeah, so I was out like the maniac I am. I spent, 7 hours walking around these ruins. And I tried this European sunscreen, and I got to say, I was not impressed. My American sunscreen that I came here with, that I used when I went to Pompeii, that worked a lot better than the European sunscreen. So I don't know if it's the brand I got. I suspect in America, they put in radiation and aluminum, and it just deflects that shit right back into space.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
In Europe, they won't let you rub aluminum into your skin, I guess.
Who the hell knows?
I didn't find that it worked as well as my American sunscreen.
All right, it's just speaking from personal experience. Eroction, thanks for the $1.99. I'm always too high for Cenk. Thank you, Zach. I don't know. Don't you think he looks like a Cenk Epps? Interesting. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate that. We'll take a couple more before we wrap, folks. We have one more segment to do, so please hit that like button. Where are we? Are we close to 666 likes yet, or no? I can't really monitor the likes. I don't know if Jake can. But yeah, we're at 551. All right, come on, get us another 100. There's 870 of you here, so all you gotta do is hit the like button. That's easy. That's easy. And subscribe if you are not yet subscribed, obviously. Folks, Donald Trump appeared on Meet the Press last weekend, and there were a few clips that got some attention, but really none as much as the one that we are about to show you. This has been the subject of a lot of debates in the Republican Party now amongst primary voters and conservative media because he was asked what he would do on abortion in his second term now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, because this was obviously a huge political problem for the Republican Party in last year's midterms, and it looks to be still a problem now in 2023 heading into the presidential election next year. And so you obviously have bills being proposed to set a national standard ban at 15 weeks. And then you have some states that are going further than that, passing heartbeat bills and things like that. And so Kristen Welker tried to get Trump on the record saying, hey, how would you handle this? Here's the answer that he gives to Meet the Press.
Mr. President, I want to give voters who are going to be weighing in on this election a very clear sense of where you stand on this.
I think they're all going to like me. I think both sides are going to like me.
Let Mr.
Going to have to happen is you're going to have to
listen. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I'm going to do a beautiful job.
It's gonna be the biggest, most beautiful abortions you've ever seen.
Here we go.
You're asking me a question.
Through abortions.
What'd you say?
When I'm We're going to have drive-through abortions.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Drive up to the window. You're in and out 25 minutes.
Right. Exactly. Here we go.
Is you're going to have to,
this question,
Kristen,
please.
you're asking me a question. What's going to happen is you're going to come up with a number of weeks or months. You're going to come up with a number that's going to make people happy, because 92% of the Democrats don't want to see abortion after a certain period of time.
If a federal ban landed on your desk, if you were reelected, would you sign it at 15
Are you talking about a complete ban?
A ban at 15 weeks?
Well, people are starting to think of 15 weeks. That seems to be a number that people are talking about right now.
Would you sign that?
I would sit down with both sides and I'd negotiate something, and we'll end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years. I'm not going to say I would or I wouldn't. I mean, Cenk is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that
I
goes
think what
too
he
far?
did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake.
All right. Now, that clip really made the rounds in conservative circles, because what Trump is doing there, he's taken a page out of the old Bill Clinton playbook. He is triangulating on the issue. He's trying to moderate on the issue to win back a lot of the affluent, sort of moderate, conservative, independent suburbanites that the Republicans have been losing these past couple of cycles. And he's running a real general election campaign in that moment, right? Because he's tacking to the center on the issue, or at least he's trying to. He's saying, I'll negotiate a number that'll bring peace to the issue. And by peace to the issue, he means that obviously since Roe v. Wade was ruled, there has not been peace on the issue, because a lot of the conservatives felt that they were just completely paralyzed on the issue, and there was no real peace on the issue because on the Democratic side they were never able to codify it into law. So what he's talking about is, let's make a deal where we can settle this as a country, which I think is a smart general election play. Like, this is certainly the smartest general election play I've heard from the Republican Party since the midterms. I don't know if it'll be enough. I think this issue is still a disaster for them, but that's the smartest general election play of any candidate I've heard. The problem is the base does not like it. So let's hear from a few different people here. First, Ben Shapiro.
The most newsworthy thing that he said in this interview was he made a comment suggesting that heartbeat bills, like to protect the lives of the unborn in states, are terrible, which is not only not pro-life, it's an awful thing to say. It's one thing to say that, tactically speaking, as president of the United States, I'm going to try to reach as much consensus as possible and gradually move the line back on abortion to accustom the American people to protecting life. Because if we move too far too fast, then the snapback is going to be dramatic, as we saw in Kansas. That's a pragmatic question, and it's a case you can make. That's not what Trump says. What Trump actually says about abortion in this interview is morally egregious. He says that heartbeat bills to, protect babies in the womb past week 5, week 6, those are terrible. That's the thing he says.
Okay, now you might have to tighten that Yiddish cup of yours a little bit, because it seems to me like he didn't really catch what Trump was actually saying. He was taking that very literally, right? I expect one of ours to be a little sharper on that. When Trump says what he did was a terrible thing, I don't think Trump's making a moral judgment there. I think when Trump says DeSantis did a terrible thing by signing the heartbeat bill, I think what he means there is that he fucked the Republicans by signing the heartbeat bill. Right. I think he says it was a politically disastrous, suicidal thing to do. That's why I should have done it. I don't think Trump was rendering a moral judgment about whether or not you should, in the eyes of God, ban abortions past 6 weeks. So I think Shapiro was being perhaps a bit too literal there. But the reason he is because he and a lot of his audience and a lot of his movement support the heartbeat bills. And this is life or death to them. Like, this is an issue that so much of the base feels very, very strongly about. Next up is Dan Bongino.
Terrible. That's the thing he says.
Here's Dan Bongino.
Listen, I wholeheartedly and completely disagree with that position. I just want to be on the record. I just completely disagree with that position. I can't reconcile that with faith, with morality. I can't reconcile that at all. I'm sorry.
All right, now here is CNN catching up with an Iowa Republican primary voter asking what she thinks.
If he really did say that, then that's a step away, because I believe that in Iowa we need to have a heartbeat bill too.
Would something like that cause you to consider supporting someone else?
Actually, yeah, it will after I do my research to see if that's true.
So clearly Trump
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Exactly. So Trump is making a big gamble here. He's taking a big chance here. He's betting that he has rock solid support enough to win the primary, even if he pisses a lot of people off on this issue. And he's thinking that he will be able to unify the base behind beating Biden or whoever the Democrats put up in November. He's thinking he has enough primary support to weather the storm here, because this has created a storm. I know we don't, in this side of indie media, we don't see a lot of this, but this has made a lot of rounds in right-wing circles. A lot of them are very upset about this. But he's gambling that, hey, if I can weather this storm, this moderation will be worth it because it'll make me stronger in the general. That was Bill Clinton's exact playbook. I'm going to betray the base on criminal justice. I'm going to betray the base on economics. I'm going to betray the base on a lot of core issues that they care about, but they're going to end up loving me for it in the end because I'm going to win in November when it counts. That's the gamble he's making here. And he may have enough support to ride it out where it ends up working out the way he thinks it is. But it is a gamble. It is a gamble, especially because a lot of evangelicals vote in Iowa. Iowa is a very Christian-heavy state on the Republican side. The Christian right pulls a lot of weight there. And so an embarrassment in Iowa could be the first domino to fall if he's not careful. So that's why this is a gamble. Might he survive it? Sure. In fact, odds are at this point, he probably will. But it's a big chance. And it's a very interesting move. It's a very interesting move because on one hand, it's a smart move for November. Like, they need to moderate. They need to figure out an answer on this issue, and this is the closest they've come to it. The problem is, as we've known for some time, it could cost you in the primary.
Right. Yeah, well, as we've said many times, with the courts overturning Roe v. Wade, the Republicans are the dog that caught the car. Did they ever actually want that to happen? You know, you got a few ideologues like Mike Pence, but most of these guys probably fucking paid for abortions. You know, I mean, they don't believe in this shit. There's just fucking throwing meat to the evangelicals. They would love to have had the Supreme Court never overturn it, and they could have just kept fundraising off it and not paying the political price forever. Now they're stuck with this result. It is, if there is anything that will allow the Democrats to win, it will be this issue and people's fears of what Republicans will do in the White House without that Roe v. Wade judicial protection to rein them in. So yeah, for a general election, that's the move. But the Republican primaries are so dominated by evangelicals. That is a very high risk strategy when you're running against a guy who signed a heartbeat bill.
Especially when Iowa votes first, because Iowa is particularly heavy on evangelicals. And yeah, it's the first state. You get upset there, all of a sudden now your momentum is shot, you know.
Well, and that's the thing. Look, it's an old saying, and I've seen it many times. American politics can change overnight, and they really can. They really can. You can never assume. That's why whenever I see people saying, because of what poll numbers say 6 months ahead of voting, that something is a fait accompli, that's absurd. It's absurd. American politics can really change like that. So you cannot assume that Trump is going to go into February with the numbers he has now. Yeah, that's a general election play, but the Republicans are not like Democrats. They're willing to burn shit down to get what they want. They're much more driven by principle than Democrats are. They're much more uncompromising. That's what I always say. I always quote that line in Apocalypse Now. Give me 2 divisions of such men, and our troubles in this country will be over very quickly. The left could only wish that they had people as committed as what you have on the right. The problem with that is, there's a very good chance that they will back a candidate whose position on abortion is untenable in a general election. So we'll see, like how strong is that MAGA movement? Can it really survive Trump taking a more reasonable or measured position on abortion than his rivals? Right? We're going to find out over the next couple of months, I guess, as this plays out. Although Trump is so non-ideological and he's such a comfortable liar, if his numbers plummet, he could just shift.
He could shift, certainly. But here he put out a string of truths on Truth Social. We don't have to read all of these, but this tells you that he was getting a lot of pushback, the fact that he felt compelled to sort of explain himself. I was able to do something that no one thought was possible. End Roe v. Wade. For 52 years, people talked, spent money, but couldn't get the job done. I did, thanks to the 3 great Supreme Court justices, blah, blah, blah. Now the pro-life community has tremendous negotiating power. Okay, now the problem is you can say that the pro-lifers have tremendous negotiating power, but by trashing the heartbeat bills, what you're also telling them is that they shouldn't use that negotiating power. Okay, and that's how you get headlines like this. This was in the Federalist. Pro-lifers shouldn't trust Trump. And one of the arguments that he makes here is that Trump is basically saying that overturning Roe v. Wade should be more or less enough, whereas to a lot of the diehards in the conservative movement, the whole point of overturning Roe versus Wade was to clear the roadblock in their way of going further with the kind of heartbeat bills and bans that they have done in several states since then. Like Roe v. Wade was just something in the way of them implementing what they wanted to implement. Overturning Roe v. Wade in itself didn't do anything but clear the space for them to pursue the kind of policies that a lot of state houses in red states have. Trump's disdain for the pro-life cause is no surprise. Trump was very pro-abortion until he ran for the Republican nomination, and his conversion to the cause was always obviously one of convenience. It is not surprising that he views significant restrictions on abortion as a mistake, and that he and his allies have denigrated pro-life laws as a waste of political capital. Indeed, Trump and his loyal supporters have been acting like the worst of the old Republican establishment that they love to denounce, treating pro-lifers as suckers to string along for votes rather than as a constituency to be rewarded in victory. Once again, that's from the Federalist. That's a right-wing paper. So this has caused a significant stir on their side of things, and it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. All right, let's take some super chats and get the hell out of here so Russell can, I guess, go nap for a little while longer before he's got to get up. Tusker, thanks for the $5. I used to be for Medicare for all and an end to endless war, but once I found out Jimmy supported those things, yes, I'm against them. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because they were screaming about it like a lunatic.
Yeah, exactly. Throwing it as a lunatic. Tusker says BJG serves the role of, yes, radical ambassador. I'll get our great leader, Kim Jong-un, to send you the good stuff, Russell, the good sunscreen. Yes, indeed. We did a plug for North Korean sunscreen. Indeed.
Please.
She has the hookup.
Well, they put the crushed crickets in it. That's
right, exactly. That's the key. Long story short, Russ, blah, blah. How did the Italian women look?
Listen, man, because I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. Most of my girlfriends have been Mediterranean looking, so I've always had a thing for the Greek Italian thing. They always look good to me.
Good answer. Zach Boyle says, and taste. Were you following up to that? How did the Italian women look? Was that a follow-up to his super chat? Chasing his super chat? Jesus Christ.
Like a mama sauce.
Yeah, right, exactly. Long story short, asked, did you guys hear Ben's AI version of My Way yet? No, I know it's out there. I just haven't had a chance to look at it. But perhaps something I should check out. I guess that's everything. I guess we got no more Rumble rants or Rockfin tips. So I guess that means we are out of here. Russell, what do you got going tomorrow? What's on the agenda?
I've got
56 more likes. That's right. If you guys want to hear Iron Maiden again, you got about 3 minutes. It would be my guess.
I've got a ferry to Santorini tomorrow, which for anybody who doesn't know, it's an island formed by a volcano that's still there in the middle. So it's basically like a crescent, and in the middle you got the volcano out in the ocean. So you can take a boat out to that volcano and climb it, which I plan on doing. And it's also got what they call the Pompeii of Greece. I think it's called Akrotiri. I had never heard about it until I did research for this trip. Very similar. I think it was buried in a volcano eruption and then uncovered. So I will be going there, and I will be there for a few days.
All right. Nice. Excellent. All right. Well, folks, just to let you guys know, we have off day tomorrow, and then Friday morning I will be live at 9 a.m. Eastern with Danny Haifong, who will be filling in for Russ on Friday. Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is our patron exclusive stream for Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers. That is going to be a fun one. They always are. We do those over on Rumble as unlisted links, so you get an email through Patreon or Substack wherever you're signed up that morning, and then you click the link in the email, and that takes you to the private show. And those are a lot of fun. They're on Rumble. They're uncensored. It's very loose. It's very freewheeling. And I think those are great shows because we have a lot of fun doing them, because we do them in a forum where we don't have to police what we say. Right?
Exactly.
We just be in the moment and focus on the show. And so I love those shows, and I hope everyone who signs up loves them as well. And you guys get call-in access to those shows as well. So that's a great opportunity to call and talk a little bit because it's a looser atmosphere. So that's something you get to take advantage of.
That's when we can really be the sick bastards we are.
Yeah, exactly. The jokes are dirtier, and the content is even more red pill than it is on here. Patreon or Substack, dudissidents.substack.com. Patreon.com/DoDissidents. Sign up so you can join on Saturday at 4 p.m. But once again, next time we will see you all is bright and early Friday morning with the great Danny Haifong. Saturday at 4 for patrons and paid Substackers. And then right back here on the public channel with Russell, 7 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, September 24th. We will see you guys all back here on Friday. Thank you very much for this evening. We had a great time with you all, as always. And until we see you again, please do be safe and be well.
Courage.
Make it work.
Please clap.